Chapter 187. Looking at the dark and magical little girl slowly walking up to the podium, the group of students seemed to be a little restless. Noah also looked at the little girl who looked like a doll, and his eyes narrowed slightly. He believed that the identity of this little girl was known to everyone present who had read the entrance guide about the director of Heartwarming Academy. That's right. The little girl in front of him, who looked like she was not even 10 years old, was the director of Heartwarming Academy. She was a genetic engineering research expert who belonged to the Dawn organization, 99 Lunar Nights. In other words, if the students studying in Heartwarming Academy were all lab rats for research, then this little girl named 99 Lunar Nights was the person who wanted to use all the lab rats here for experiments. In front of everyone present, the director stood on the podium and looked at the many students below. A slightly evil smile gradually appeared on her delicate doll-like face. Welcome, freshmen, to Heartwarming Academy. I am the director of this academy, 99 Lunar Nights. Just when everyone thought that the director was going to start the boring entrance ceremony without any nutrition, unexpectedly, the director tilted her head and said this. Although I would like to thank everyone who came from different places, that will have to wait until everyone has experienced the traditional activity of this academy, the ceremony of qualification. Below, Noah was slightly stunned. Ceremony of qualification. What's that? Not only Noah, but even Ivanley and the students in the auditorium were puzzled. The director seemed to ignore everyone's puzzlement and continued to explain. First, please confirm the person sitting next to you. Next to us. Noah and Ivanley immediately looked at each other. Needless to say, the person sitting next to Noah and Ivanley was each other. Then, the director, who was full of evil, smiled, and her smile became more and more evil. The next sentence directly changed the atmosphere of the entire auditorium. Then, I would like to invite all new students to immediately battle with the person you have confirmed. Wadash! The entire auditorium suddenly burst into an uproar, and astonished voices continuously rang out from all directions. Duel. Noah and Ivanley, who were still looking at each other, narrowed their eyes at the same time. Ivanley turned his head abruptly to look at the podium, his face full of disbelief. Noah slowly raised his head and looked at 99 Lunar Nights, who was full of evil, with his dark eyes flickering. The director, on the other hand, seemed to not have noticed the commotion and began to explain cruelly. In the following duels, the winner will be able to obtain the Academy's recognition and become a student of the Academy. The loser will have his Daybreak Star rune removed after the duel. There are no restrictions on the specific rules. Everyone can use the miracle that they have obtained today, Blaze. If the victor isn't decided within 10 minutes, then both parties will be expelled from the academy. At this point, the petite director seemed to be amused by her own words, and the corners of her mouth curled up. Of course, you can also choose not to use Blaze, but it must be mentioned here that the so-called Blaze is actually a weapon that materializes the soul through the spiritual power strengthened by the Daybreak Star tattoo. Therefore, Blaze can only cause fatigue and pain to the attacking opponent's spiritual power, and will not cause harm to the person's body. However, if you don't use Blaze, then the damage caused will be directly reflected on the opponent's body. However, this sentence was not able to make the crowd of students feel relieved at all. Instead, it aroused their indignation. What do you mean it won't cause harm? Didn't you say that as long as you have adaptability, you can enter the academy? Are you lying to us? Facing the anger of the crowd of students, the girl in black standing on the podium smiled indifferently. Don't forget, this is a school that cultivates combat skills. Everything is to filter out students with strength. If you can't understand this school's way of doing things, then give up on the Daybreak Star tattoo, and leave Heartwarming Academy. The air in the auditorium suddenly froze. Silence dominated the entire auditorium. Ivan clenched his fists tightly, as if he could not comply with this cruel rule. Just as he was about to stand up and say something, the sound of a chair being pushed aside sounded. Everyone's gaze, including 99th Lunar Night, the surrounding teachers, and all the students, all gathered on the youth who stood up. Noah glanced at 99th Lunar Night, turned around, and walked towards the door without hesitation. Seeing this, everyone present understood. Noah had chosen to leave. Seeing Noah leave so decisively, the smile on 99th Lunar Night's face disappeared. She looked at Noah's back, and remained silent. Wait! Ivan, on the other hand, hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed the hem of Noah's clothes, and asked anxiously. You! What are you doing? Ivan. Noah turned sideways and looked at Ivan, who was grabbing the hem of his clothes, with a puzzled expression on his face. Shouldn't I be the one asking this question? What are you doing? You. Are you planning to leave? Ivanly ignored Noah. His grip on Noah's arm tightened as he stared at Noah without letting go. Is it okay if I don't stay here? Isn't it obvious? Noah sighed. The chairman already said that I can leave whenever I want. This shouldn't be strange, right? But you'll have the Daybreak Star tattoo removed. Ivan's face was filled with disbelief. Even if that's the case, it's okay. Ivan. Noah shook his head with a smile, reached out, and patted Ivan's head. I don't know why you have to stay here, but I want to tell you that if you simply want to become stronger, it's okay if you don't rely on the Daybreak Star tattoo. This sentence caused all the students to widen their eyes in shock. It's okay if you don't rely on the Daybreak Star tattoo. Isn't that something that can make the human body stronger than humans? On the podium, the chairman also looked at Noah, and chose to speak at this time. You mean, you want to rely on your own strength to surpass the surpasser? Noah raised his head and looked at 99th Lunar Night. What's so strange about it? The Daybreak Star tattoo can give a person a body and spirit that far surpasses a human's. It can also bring a soul weapon, the blaze. That's why it's called a surpasser, which means surpassing humans. 99th Lunar Night shook her head as if she was mocking Noah's naivety. Normal humans can't have stronger strength than this. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows, glanced at the expressionless 99th Lunar Night, and then looked at the surrounding students who were looking at each other. He closed his eyes for a moment, and then suddenly opened them. In that case, why don't we carry out another qualification ceremony? As soon as this sentence came out, not to mention the surrounding students, even 99th Lunar Night was stunned. Another qualification ceremony. Noah curled his lips into a smile, pressed down on Ivan's hand that was tightly grabbing his clothes, walked past Ivan, who was looking at him, and took 2 steps forward, casting his gaze on the teachers standing on both sides of 99th Lunar Night. Everyone, the teachers of Howling Academy should also be surpassers, people who have obtained the qualifications to graduate from this academy, and are much stronger than normal surpassers, right? The group of teachers who didn't understand what Noah meant had a strange expression on their faces. However, Noah's next sentence made the strange expressions on these teachers' faces freeze. I won't use strength that surpasses a human's level. Noah suddenly smiled. So, teachers, why don't one of you come out, and use the identity of a surpasser to fight with me, a human? The surrounding students all froze in place, as if they had been petrified, their mouths wide open in shock. Noah! Ivan cried out in shock. The teachers all had an expression of being unable to react, as if they hadn't thought that the spearhead would suddenly turn to them. For a moment, their faces were filled with bewilderment. Only 99th Lunar Night's doll-like delicate face sank, but her eyes also showed surprise. Chapter 188. Bearing the astonished gazes from all directions, Noah, who had a calm expression on his face, sighed in his heart. It was a pity. In fact, Noah was very curious about this school. Surpassers. the people hidden in this ordinary world. If this was the mysterious side of this world, then Noah didn't mind seeing with his own eyes what kind of power the surpassers in this world had. Unfortunately, 99 lunar nights' words dispelled Noah's idea. As mentioned before, although he felt that he could more or less get closer to the world fragment in Heartwarming Academy, Noah had no reason to stay here. If it was another unknown student sitting next to him today, then not only would Noah not leave, but he would also be happy to see the power of these new surpassers. However, the person sitting next to Noah was not a stranger, but the first real friend he made in this world. Although they had only known each other for less than half a day, Ivan had a personality and charisma that others couldn't hate, which made Noah spend a rather pleasant time with him. Let Noah fight with Ivan. For such a dispensable reason like staying in Heartwarming Academy. Then, if he won, Noah would be kicking away the first friend he made in this world. If he lost, with Ivan's personality, he would definitely feel guilty, and he would still have to leave. Since that was the case, why not just leave and have a good time? Anyway, Noah didn't have any reason to stay here, right? As for removing the daybreak star pattern, Noah didn't care at all. All the effects of the daybreak star pattern had been absorbed by Noah's special constitution. Even if the daybreak star pattern was removed from Noah's body, Noah's enhancement would still exist, and the blaze, and the limit ability would also not disappear. Therefore, even if the other party didn't remove the daybreak star pattern from his body, afterwards, Noah would definitely use magic to expel all the nanomachines in his body at the right time. Of course, before that, it didn't matter if he let these people who thought that they had the power to surpass human experience a little bit of true strength. The ability Noah obtained from the daybreak star pattern, in addition to the blaze, there was also an inexplicable limit that appeared. By using this ability, Noah could freely adjust the strength of his various aspects of power. At first glance, this ability seemed useless, but Noah found that it was like a spring, the tighter the restriction, the higher it would bounce. This limit ability could make Noah's restricted power self-increase bit by bit. Hence, on the way to the auditorium, Noah had already restricted all of his mana and allowed it to enter a state of automatic enhancement. Now, Noah activated the limit ability to limit his own strength. All of a sudden, Noah's strength, stamina, endurance, speed, agility, and other physical attributes began to decline at a clear rate. It didn't disappear. Instead, it was as if he was wearing a limit device, and was forced to a standard. In other words, these powers that exceeded the standard were all sealed in Noah's body, making Noah reach a state where he could only use the strength of an ordinary person. Shaking his arm strength that had decreased to a frightening degree after the limit, Noah looked straight at 99 lunar nights on the podium, and the corner of his mouth hooked up. How about it? Miss Chairman. Do you want to see if the power that you said ordinary people can't have can do anything to me? Noah. Ivan quickly stepped forward. What are you talking about? How can ordinary people? Before Ivan could finish his words, 99 lunar nights suddenly laughed and interrupted Ivan's words. Since it's like this, there's no harm in giving it a try. After saying that, 99 lunar nights turned her head and looked at a middle-aged teacher. Teacher Daisuke, can I trouble you? Understood, Chairman. The teacher named Daisuke nodded and walked towards Noah, arriving in front of Noah. First, he sized up Noah, then his eyes showed an indifferent expression. You really decided to only use the strength of an ordinary person to fight with me? Noah raised his hand and stopped Ivan, who still wanted to say something. Ignoring Ivan's worried face, he took a step forward. You also came from an ordinary person, right? You should be able to clearly distinguish whether or not I will use the strength of an ordinary person, right? Your opponent is not an ordinary surpasser, but an existence that can guide surpassers. On the podium, 99 lunar nights said. It doesn't matter if you use the strength you obtained, you can also use blaze, I can give you special permission. Noah didn't answer, but looked at Daisuke, silently expressing his disdain. Looking at Noah who casually stood in front of him, Daisuke stretched out his hand and pressed his chest. Blaze! With the sound of the incantation to summon the soul, a gorgeous star pattern rotated from Daisuke's chest, bringing a hot flame, covering Daisuke's hands. After the flame dissipated, a pair of pitch-black iron weapons with lines on the surface appeared in Daisuke's hands. It was a simple weapon called the brass knuckles. I won't be merciful, Daisuke said indifferently. What kind of power do surpassers have? Look carefully. After saying that, Daisuke fiercely clenched his fists, and the brass knuckles collided with each other. After a clang sound, Daisuke's feet stepped on the ground, and his body directly rushed toward Noah, clenching his fists, and the sharp part of the brass knuckles on his fists immediately flashed with some cold light. Shio! When he was only half a meter away from Noah, Daisuke's figure suddenly stopped, and his right hand drew a tricky angle, and in the sharp sound of the air exploding, he directly aimed at Noah's head. With that speed, with the speed of an ordinary person, it's absolutely impossible to avoid. Daisuke had such confidence. However, the careless Daisuke didn't notice that before he punched, Noah's body had already begun to move. As if he had already expected Daisuke's attack, Noah tilted his head before Daisuke punched. Ho! The fist with the brass knuckles immediately made a loud sound, brushing Noah's shoulder and cheek, and swinging in the air. Daisuke's face suddenly changed. At this time, Noah had already raised his palm, fiercely grabbed Daisuke's hand, and kicked Daisuke's knee. Bang! In the midst of the impact, Daisuke only felt pain in his knee, and his body softened, and he involuntarily knelt down. However, before Daisuke knelt on the ground, Noah's body turned, and his back was facing Daisuke, and his hand that grabbed Daisuke's arm pulled hard. In the state of Daisuke's unstable body, he directly carried Daisuke on his back and threw him to the ground. Thus, a standard shoulder throw was displayed in front of everyone. Bang! Go! Without warning, Daisuke was thrown to the ground by Noah's shoulder throw. In the midst of the collision, Daisuke suddenly spat out all the air in his lungs, and he was stunned. As a surpasser, he was actually thrown to the ground by a kid with the strength of an ordinary person. Wow! The surrounding students were in a hubbub. Liar! Ivanli covered her mouth, unable to hide her inner surprise. On the podium, 99 Lunar Knight's expression was slightly dignified, without the slightest trace of evil at the beginning. For the current Daisuke, those noises were like laughing at him, making Daisuke feel like his face was on fire. He gritted his teeth and jumped up fiercely. Before that, Noah once again seemed to have predicted Daisuke's action, and he stepped back to open the distance. Damn it! Daisuke's face trembled slightly, and he gritted his teeth, mixed with a little anger, and rushed toward Noah's direction again. Feeling the other party rushing toward him, Noah narrowed his eyes, looking at the figure of Daisuke who was getting closer and closer, and the corner of his mouth slowly pulled up a cold arc. Instead, he clasped Daisuke's arm with his fingers and twisted Daisuke's joints. In an instant, the fist that Daisuke had just swung seemed to want to return to where it came from. Following the trend of Noah's twisting joints, it bent and punched back at Daisuke's own chest. Bang! The fist with brass knuckles fell heavily on Daisuke's own chest. Goo! A huge force acted on Daisuke's chest, making Daisuke groan and retreat a few steps. His chest was in pain. It was different from the throw that Noah used just now. As a surpasser who had strengthened all aspects of physical fitness, even if he was hit by Noah's throw, Daisuke would only feel a little pain at most. His strengthened physical resistance would not let him be hurt by such an attack. However, it was different this time. It was Daisuke's own fist that hit him. That was equivalent to letting Daisuke eat the attack of a surpasser who had the same strength as him. Therefore, this time, the the pain inflicted on Daisuke's chest really hurt him. He almost couldn't breathe, which made Daisuke angry. Do you only know how to play these little tricks? With a roar, Daisuke clenched his fists tightly and rushed forward. He raised his fist, and with a sharp wind-breaking force, he viciously smashed it down on Noah's shoulder with a muffled sound in the air. Could it be that you want me, human, to go head-to-head with you, surpasser? Noah sneered, but his body moved in advance again. He didn't retreat but moved forward. He leaned his body and pushed up. As the target of Daisuke's attack, his shoulders suddenly jumped up from under Daisuke's body and slammed into him. Bang! Because of the punch, even if Daisuke reacted, his body couldn't keep up with the reaction. He was hit by Noah's shoulder. Of course, with the strength of an ordinary person, even if he was hit by Noah's attack, the damage that Noah could do to Daisuke was very limited. But under this hit, Daisuke's body was slightly floating, and his feet were also off the ground. In the next second, Noah turned sideways, rotated his leg, and threw out a kick, kicking Daisuke's heel heavily. Daisuke, who was floating in the air, suddenly lost his balance. Paw! Thus, Daisuke fell to the ground and made a painful sound. Bastard! The furious Daisuke straightened his body and wanted to get up from the ground. Ah! However, at this moment, the surrounding students suddenly exclaimed in unison. Before Daisuke realized what these exclamations meant, behind Daisuke, a hand bent up, revealing a slightly sharp elbow, and heavily hit Daisuke below. Bang! With a blunt sound, the elbow mercilessly fell on the back of Daisuke's neck. Daisuke's eyes bulged, and his body fell back to the ground again. His vision was all blurred, and even his consciousness was in chaos. Ah! Daisuke couldn't help but squeeze out a low groan, covering his neck, supporting his hazy consciousness, and turned his head with difficulty, looking at Noah. You're really a surpasser. Even if it's the strength of an ordinary person, if the back of the neck is hit, he should have fainted immediately. I thought my judgment was right. Noah looked condescendingly at Daisuke, who was paralyzed on the ground, and pretended to be surprised. Then he narrowed his eyes and suddenly lifted his foot. Of course, if you didn't faint, you'll faint if I hit you again, right? After saying that, Noah's heel was like a heavy iron hammer, bringing along a wind, and fell on the back of Daisuke's neck. Bang! Goo! Daisuke's pair of eyes bulged again, and his face turned white. His vision finally turned from blurred to darkness, and he completely lost consciousness. Chee! The brass knuckles on Daisuke's fist made a soft sound, turned into a flame, and dissipated in the air. Dong! Daisuke collapsed on the ground, his eyes closed, and he was completely unable to move. The entire place fell silent. Looking at Daisuke, who had completely lost consciousness on the ground, the pupils of the surrounding students slowly widened, and after a while, the sound of inhaling cold air constantly echoed. 99 lunar nights had closed her eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. Her face was completely expressionless. Noah! Ivanli could only squeeze out such a call from his throat, but he didn't know what words to use to express the surprise in his heart, so he froze there. In front of everyone present, Noah patted the dust on his uniform, glanced at 99 lunar nights, who closed her eyes, and didn't say any words of victory, turned around, and walked towards the door. Wait! At this time, a suppressed roar sounded from behind Noah. I haven't lost yet. Covering his neck, Daisuke, who climbed up from the ground, grabbed a chair next to him, like a mad wild bear, rushed towards Noah, and threw the chair in his hand at Noah. Ah! The screams of some of the female students rang out. Noah fiercely turned his body, swung his foot, and kicked Daisuke's hand that was holding the chair. Daisuke screamed in pain, his hand loosened, and the chair suddenly flew out. In front of the spinning chair, Ivanli stood there sluggishly. Chapter 190. Whoosh! As if falling from the sky, the heavy chair spun in the air and smashed towards Ivanli with a muffled sound. Ivanli, who was still immersed in the shock of Noah defeating a surpasser teacher with the power of a normal human, didn't have time to react. He could only stand there stupidly and watch the heavy chair smash towards him. Just as Ivanli was about to instinctively close his eyes, a sound like this echoed throughout the auditorium. Blaze! The gorgeous flame with the crimson light illuminated every corner of the auditorium. Bang! The next moment, a gunshot that the students could only hear on TV echoed in the auditorium. A pitch-black bullet pierced through the air, leaving a long trail of light behind it. It was like an extremely small meteor as it pierced through the atmosphere, bringing with it a sharp piercing sound as it flew towards Ivan's chair. Bang! The heavy chair suddenly exploded as if it had exploded. It scattered into pieces and dust and fell to the ground. Ivanli subconsciously raised his hand to block the shockwave caused by the chair's explosion. Then he opened his eyes and looked towards the direction of the gunshot along with everyone in the auditorium. Immediately, everyone in the auditorium saw it. He saw a weapon in Noah's hand that shouldn't have appeared here. Chee! Perhaps because he was too eager to use it, the flames from the blaze were still on Noah's weapon. After a while, the flames dissipated with a burning sound, exposing the weapon in the flames to the air. It was actually a gun. It wasn't a spear used for close combat, but a handgun. The body of the gun was as long as an automatic pistol. It was 8 inches long and carried a cylinder at the back of the gun. It was obviously a modified large-caliber revolver. The pitch-black body of the gun was covered with white veins like tree roots. The blaze of the revolver was held tightly in Noah's hand as he aimed it at the sky in front of Ivan. It was obvious who the person who had just saved Ivan from danger was. However, everyone had already forgotten about the chair. Even Ivan had forgotten about the danger he had just encountered. He was at a loss for words. Gun. It was no wonder that Ivanli and the surrounding students were so surprised. That was because the blaze, which was materialized from the soul, could not possibly be something like a handgun. Perhaps it was because the human soul itself was a very simple existence, but the blaze of the surpassers were also very simple weapons. For a weapon with an extremely complicated structure like a gun, it was very unlikely that it would appear in the list of blaze. Noah also knew this point. He put down his hand holding the gun and hid the revolver behind him as if he didn't want to attract attention. However, behind Noah, 99 lunar knights who was standing on the podium stared at the revolver in Noah's hand and said word by word. It seems that you are an exception. Exception. Exceeding the norm was an exception. Exceeding the norm was an exception. Possessing the blaze that was impossible to appear under normal circumstances. Therefore, Noah was an exception. Regarding this, Noah remained silent. The revolver in his hand turned into a flame and disappeared on the spot. Then, Noah didn't stay any longer. Under the silent atmosphere, he walked out of the auditorium step by step. Noah didn't notice it. Although everyone in the auditorium was watching him leave, there were 3 people whose eyes were different from the others. There was not only surprise, but also other extremely complicated emotions. One was 99 lunar knights who was standing on the podium. One was the brown-haired youth who was standing in the corner. The last one was the doll-like silver-haired girl who stole everyone's attention as soon as she entered the auditorium. Walking out of the auditorium, Noah came to the sky full of cherry blossoms. He raised his hand and looked at his hand, frowning deeply. 99 lunar knights said that the blaze was a weapon of the soul. It could only cause damage to the mind and not the body. However, Daisuke's brass knuckles could smash the chair into pieces. Noah's revolver could also shoot the chair. Both of them could destroy the chair. Since the blaze could destroy the chair, then it should be able to cause damage to the body, right? However, 99 Lunar Nights said that the blaze could only cause damage to the mind. That was obviously a lie, right? Thinking of this, Noah couldn't help but shake his head. Impossible. 99 Lunar Nights wouldn't lie so easily. After all, as long as the students in the auditorium fought according to the qualification ritual, then the lie would be instantly exposed. Therefore, Noah felt that what 99 Lunar Nights said shouldn't be a lie. However, the blaze should have other secrets. At the very least, Noah felt that the knight's sword and revolver that had become part of his soul seemed to have undergone some changes. As for the specific changes, Noah still didn't know. However, in terms of appearance, his revolver had some changes. On the body of the gun, there were more vein-like white lines. Moreover, Noah's revolver didn't need to be loaded with bullets. As long as he turned his mental power into bullets and filled the revolver formed by his soul, Noah's revolver would be able to shoot continuously. In other words, the weakness of Noah's revolver having less bullets was completely made up for. Of course, in addition to this, the revolver also had another weakness. Looking closely, Noah's raised hand was constantly trembling, which made Noah bitterly laugh. I almost forgot. Because of the power enhancement, the gun's weight and recoil have been increased. It requires a certain amount of arm strength to use it. It was because of this that Noah, who used an ordinary person's arm strength to fire the gun, almost broke the skin on his hand and dislocated his bones. Noah, who secretly cursed himself for being careless, was about to leave when an urgent voice sounded. Wait! In the auditorium, Ivan quickly ran out. When Noah turned around, he was already in front of Noah. Then he slowed down and met Noah's gaze. In the end, he couldn't say a word. What's wrong? Looking at Ivan's complicated expression, Noah helplessly smiled. Don't we need to go through the qualification ceremony? The chairman said that as my opponent, you have already forfeited, so I am qualified. Ivan lowered his head and then raised it up with force. His beautiful eyes flashed with a stubborn expression. You chose to give up because of me, right? Noah, who clearly saw the stubborn expression in Ivan's eyes, subconsciously wanted to shake his head, but under Ivan's gaze, he couldn't help but dispel the thought and sighed. Is it important? It may not be important to you, but it is very important to me. Ivan took a deep breath and showed a determined expression. I have something that I want to do no matter what, so I must stay here. Is that so? Noah shrugged. Then haven't you achieved it now? But that was achieved by stepping on other people's path. Ivan's voice was slightly dull. Even if you don't care, I still can't not care. Then all the more reason for you to pull yourself together. Seeing the determination on Ivan's face turn into pain, Noah couldn't help but reach out and touch her head. Otherwise, wouldn't my efforts be in vain? Ivan's mouth slightly opened, but after a while, he pursed it and changed it into a smile. Sorry, and thank you. Ah. Noah chuckled and nodded. Good luck. The conversation ended. But at this moment, another voice interrupted. Can you give me a little time to talk to you? Accompanied by such a sentence, at the entrance of the auditorium, a girl dressed in black walked over step by step. Chapter 191. Rollercoasters Academy, First Grade Classroom. Compared to the luxurious Western-style building outside, Rollercoasters Academy's classroom seemed very ordinary. The ordinary here meant that the classroom had an ordinary area and ordinary furnishings. However, the tables arranged in the classroom were not the single tables used in primary and middle schools. Instead, they were long tables for two people, and were quite wide. At this time, the new students who passed the qualification ceremony gathered in this classroom one by one, each looking for a seat and sitting down. There were about 30 or 40 new students in this classroom. The rest were still being treated because they were injured during the qualification ceremony. Blaze was a weapon formed from the soul, so it could cause damage to the soul. This point had already been confirmed. The proof was that the new students here had more or less received a direct attack from the blaze of their dual opponent, but their bodies had not received any damage, only feeling a bit mentally tired. Thus, most of the new students who were injured had received a direct attack, such as being hit by a punch, which was why they stayed outside to treat their injuries. Among those present, the freshmen who had been struck by Blaze were currently sleeping on the tables with tired faces. A small portion of the freshmen who hadn't suffered any damage had begun to chat and introduce themselves. Not long after, a girl with a ponytail appeared at the door, attracting the curious gazes of many people present. The person who came was Evanley, who had also been announced as qualified. The students here were all very curious about Evanley. This was not only because Evanley was very cute and beautiful, but also because Evanley seemed to be very familiar with that person in the auditorium. He defeated a surpasser as an ordinary person. Moreover, the person he defeated was a surpasser who was a teacher of Holang Academy. In addition to the blaze of the revolver that should not have appeared, how could a person who gathered so many conditions not receive attention? Unfortunately, that person had already left Holang Academy. Therefore, everyone's curiosity was focused on Evanley, who seemed to be very familiar with the other party. However, in the next moment, the figure of a person who had also entered the classroom behind Ivan completely stunned the students in the classroom. Soon after, a commotion broke out among them. That person, how could this be? Didn't he leave the academy already? Yes. The person who came in behind Ivan was surprisingly Noah, who was supposed to leave the academy. Ivan seemed to be in a good mood. His beautiful face was full of smiles. After looking around the classroom, he came to the last row and waved cheerfully at Noah, who was still standing at the door. Noah! Over here! Seeing Evanley's cheerful appearance, although Noah was a bit helpless, he still obediently walked over. Under the noises and pointing of the freshmen, he sat down with Evanley at a table shared by two people in the last row of the classroom. Even so, the gazes of the surrounding freshmen were still focused on Noah. Curiosity, surprise, bewilderment, doubt, and other emotions were displayed without any concealment. Seeing this, Ivan evilly nudged Noah with his hand. You're really popular. If it's just being popular, then that's fine. Noah waved his hand carelessly. They're just curious as to why I'm here, right? That's true. At the mention of this, Ivan beamed with joy. Even I almost thought that I wouldn't have the chance to sit in the same classroom as you, but luckily, the chairman didn't let you go, and recruited you again. Outside the auditorium where the entrance ceremony was held, before Noah and Ivan could say goodbye, 99 lunar nights appeared in front of the two of them. The other party's intention was very simple. It was to let Noah continue to study in Holang Academy. According to the other party, with the strength of a normal person, he could defeat the best of the surpassers. Based on the position of the chairman of Holang Academy, 99 lunar nights was looking forward to how far Noah could go as a surpasser in the future. Perhaps this was only one of the reasons. Because both Noah and Ivan could guess that the reason why 99 lunar nights made an exception to let Noah continue to study in Holang Academy was not only because of Noah's future, but also because of Noah's blaze. The exception of the blaze revolver. Because of this, 99 lunar nights made an exception and personally appeared to ask Noah to stay. Therefore, when Noah was still considering whether to agree to stay or not, Ivan, with a face full of joy, made the decision for Noah. He nodded repeatedly and helped Noah agree. Noah knew that Ivan was still feeling guilty for leaving, which was why he acted so rudely when he knew that he could stay, but he didn't say anything and let Ivan be happy. After all, although there was no reason for him to stay, at the same time, Noah didn't have any reason to leave either. Originally, Noah chose to leave because of Ivan. Since both of them could stay, then Noah naturally didn't have to leave. Therefore, Noah and Ivan came to the classroom together. Sigh. Noah heaved a sigh. I feel that just entering the school is very tiring. That's true. Even Ivan showed a weak smile. The implantation of the Daybreak Star tattoo at the beginning was already very tiring, and then there's the qualification ceremony. If it wasn't for you, I would still have to fight. The first day is already so tiring, I'm scared just thinking about the future. Don't tell me something unexpected will happen later. Noah said with a smile that wasn't a smile. For example, between you and your desk mate, only the one with better final exam results can stay, the one with worse results has to drop out, or something like that. It can't be. Ivanly's expression froze, and his smile became forced. No matter what, it can't be to that extent, right? As he said this, Ivan began to fidget, but in the next second, he saw Noah's smile and suddenly woke up. Are you trying to make fun of me? Ivanly raised her fist angrily. Well, just kidding, just kidding. Noah laughed and then smiled at Ivan and said this very casually. Don't worry, if that kind of thing really happens again, I will still choose to let Ivan stay. Looking at the relaxed smile on Noah's face, listening to the seemingly casual words from Noah, Ivan's heartbeat suddenly sped up, his face blushed, and he quickly turned his head away. What's wrong? No. Nothing, really. But your face is so red. Then you're mistaken. But you look wrong. Right. Law. Okay. I'm mistaken. Why are you so angry and hitting people? Humph. Just as Noah and Ivan were fooling around, at the door, ding-ling, sound entered everyone's ears. Then, the classroom suddenly became silent. When Noah and Ivan also looked at the direction of the door, the next moment, a beautiful figure was imprinted in everyone's eyes. Silver waist-length hair, deep red eyes, and hair with bells on both sides of her hair. Her figure was petite, and as beautiful as a doll. It was the silver-haired girl with stunning looks. On the side, Ivan made a sound of surprise. Did that child also pass the qualification ceremony? It was natural that Ivan would be surprised. After all, such a soft and beautiful girl, no matter how you looked at it, did not look like she was good at fighting. Just like in the auditorium, she did not care about the gazes of the people around her. After entering the classroom, she looked around. In the next second, a pair of crimson eyes were fixed in a certain direction. In that direction, Noah's gaze just so happened to meet with that person's. Chapter 192. Separated by a classroom, Noah and the young lady's eyes met. Just when Noah thought that she was about to shift her gaze away, who knew that the young lady would continue to stare at him. Noah was startled. Ivan blinked and looked at Noah strangely. That child seems to be looking at you, right? Is that so? Although Noah had the same thought, he still replied with a question that he didn't mean. It should be a coincidence, right? It was a pity that the moment Noah said this, the silver-haired young lady strode forward. Ding ding. Her long silver hair that reached her waist swayed with its owner's footsteps. The young girl's expression did not change at all. Accompanied by the ringing of the bell, she walked to Noah's side. Then, she lowered her head slightly and bowed. Noah and Ivanly looked at each other, then nodded and saluted with strange expressions. At this moment, the silver-haired young lady lifted her head and moved a chair from the seat beside her to the other side of Noah and sat down. Thus, with a beautiful girl with tea-colored hair on his left and a beautiful girl with silver-colored hair on his right, Noah received strange looks from all the students present in this situation, where it was as if he was hugging two girls in each arm. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. Undoubtedly, there were a lot of empty seats around. Furthermore, he was already sitting with Ivan, so why did she purposely sit beside him? Furthermore, he wasn't sure if it was just Noah's imagination. Noah had a feeling that the other party was secretly observing him. On the side, Ivanly's eyes moved back and forth between Noah and the silver-haired girl's face. After a while, he looked at Noah with a subtle expression. "Do you know this child?" "Ha!" Noah laughed dryly and didn't answer. "Do I look like I know her?" "But..." Ivan whispered to Noah. "No matter how you look at it, she looks like she's secretly looking at you, right?" "That seems to be the case." Noah could naturally sense that someone was looking at him. He immediately turned his head and looked over. The silver-haired young lady was startled, as if she was afraid that her secret observation of Noah would be discovered. She didn't even know that her attention had already been discovered and turned her head away. Noah's mouth twitched again. Ahem. It was as if Ivan was trying to smooth things over for Noah. With a kind smile on his face, he leaned over and faced the silver-haired girl. "Hello, I'm Ivan Yongsong." The bell on the silver-haired young lady's head shook slightly, and at the same time, she slowly turned her head and stole a glance at Noah before lowering her head to Ivan. "My name is Julie Sigtuna. Please take care of me." "Is her name Julie?" "The name is as cute as the person." Ivan seemed to have completely forgotten about Noah's existence, and his body slowly moved closer to the young lady named Julie. "I'll call you Julie, is that okay?" "Yes." Julie expressionlessly moved her lips. "That's fine." However, Ivan cared about another word from Julie's mouth. "Yeah. It means yes." "Oh. You have a habit of saying things. So cute." "Thank you for the compliment. You're also cute when you're expressionless and modest." "Really?" Ivan, who was chatting with Julie, didn't notice that because he unconsciously moved closer to Julie, Ivan's soft breasts under his uniform were tightly pressed against Noah's arm. Noah's expression had completely turned into a resentful expression. While Ivan and Julie were chatting, in fact, it was just Ivan talking as if they were close, and Julie only responded, he was under the gaze from all directions, and he felt his head start to hurt. Sure enough, staying in this school was a wrong decision. When Noah started to feel uncomfortable, the students who finished the treatment slowly walked into the classroom with exhausted expressions. Almost at the same time, as if they had anticipated the arrival of all the freshmen, the window at the side suddenly opened with a creaking sound. "Hello. Hello." A coquettish voice, accompanied by the sound of the window being opened, echoed together. Immediately, a young girl suddenly appeared on the window. With a perfect somersault, she jumped from the window to the podium, entering everyone's sight. She was a girl who was cute in all aspects, but also strange in all aspects. The reason why she was cute was very simple. Because she looked like she was only 17 or 18 years old, with a head of beautiful black hair, and a delicate face. Coupled with her vitality, she was very cute no matter how you looked at her. The reason why she was strange was even simpler. She was wearing a maid's outfit, and on her head was a pair of rabbit ears. Such a cute and strange girl stood on the podium. She didn't care about the fact that she might be exposed under her dress, and straightforwardly struck a pose. "Nice to meet you. I'm Moonlight Glass Rabbit. I'm everyone's class teacher. Please affectionately call me Teacher Little Rabbit." The coquettish and cheerful voice unsurprisingly made everyone, including Noah and Ivan, except for the expressionless Julie, who couldn't tell what was on her mind, stunned. They didn't know how to react. No matter who it was, they would be stunned, right? A girl who was at most 17 or 18 years old suddenly popped out and said she was the class teacher. Not to mention, her unique entrance, unique coquettish voice, and unique clothing would make people subconsciously stunned. Not to mention, all the girls who called themselves Moonlight Glass Rabbit were gathered here. Oh, 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 oh. Then, Teacher Little Rabbit's, still self-proclaimed, gaze swept over Noah, and let out an extremely exaggerated sound of surprise. Full of vitality, she reached out her hand and pointed at Noah. Found it, found it. You're the exception, right? After saying that, Teacher Little Rabbit made a thump, jump, sound effect, fiercely jumped into the air, and landed on the table in front of Noah. Lying down, she said with a smile. Teacher Little Rabbit, I also saw the battle where you defeated Daisuke-sensei. How should I say it? You're really amazing. Although Daisuke-sensei is only at the level of rank 3. But you can use the strength of a normal person to defeat a rank 3. Teacher Little Rabbit, I almost fell for you. Ivanly and Julie had completely shut down and were unable to react. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched, and when he felt that even his head was starting to hurt, he faintly sighed, and asked Teacher Little Rabbit who was close by. What's rank 3? You don't know. Teacher Little Rabbit's eyes widened in surprise, but in the next second, as if it was a play, she giggled. It's the Daybreak Star rune implanted in your body. It's also divided into levels. Teacher Little Rabbit said as she put her hand in front of Noah, and stretched out a finger, making a wand gesture. The Surpasser, who has just been implanted with the Daybreak Star rune, is rank I, which is your current level. The Surpasser can also continuously train themselves, so that their body and spirit can be strengthened faster than ordinary people. At the end of the semester, the school will arrange a ceremony called Sublimation Ritual to let you upgrade your level. If your body and mind are fully trained, you can successfully upgrade, and your body and spirit will once again be strengthened beyond imagination. Noah's eyes couldn't help but light up. He can continue to be strengthened? Then wouldn't his body, spirit, and magic be strengthened again? Well, because you're super excellent, the news that the chairman made an exception and allowed you to enter the school has already spread. Teacher Little Rabbit jumped off the table full of spirit, stuck out her tongue at the surrounding students, and made a cute expression. So, you'll have a super strong classmate in the future, so don't be defeated. After saying that, Teacher Little Rabbit returned to the podium. Then, let's first make the necessary explanations. By the way, Teacher Little Rabbit returned to the podium by jumping. Chapter 193. Then. Has everyone received it? With a tone so sweet that it gave people goosebumps, Teacher Little Bunny ran back and forth in the classroom like a real rabbit. Everyone seemed to be used to this crazy rabbit. They looked at the things in their hands, which were the student handbook, student ID card, and dormitory guide. As for the school rules and dormitory regulations, you can read them yourself in your free time. The student ID card can be used as a credit card. There will be a monthly allowance of 100,000 yen for everyone to use. Everyone, please don't lose it, 100,000 yen. In the classroom, the students' exclamations rang out one after another. 100,000 yen of living expenses every month. Not to mention a student's living expenses, it was more than enough for a family's living expenses. Noah, who didn't pay much attention to this, clearly saw that when Ivanly heard that there would be 100,000 yen of living expenses every month in the student ID card, his hand holding the student ID card tightened. Ignoring the surrounding gazes, he stood up and asked Teacher Little Bunny with a serious face. Teacher, can the school send my monthly living expenses back home? Send it back home. Noah's heart moved. He glanced at Ivanly and saw the serious expression on Ivanly's face. Teacher Little Bunny seemed to be startled, but then she pressed her fingers against her cheeks and smiled cutely. This is a problem that the previous students haven't mentioned. You can apply to the school yourself. There shouldn't be any problem. The serious expression on Ivanley's face suddenly melted. He sat down with joy from the bottom of his heart. He held the student ID card and solemnly put it into his arms as if it was a treasure. Then, please listen to me carefully. Teacher Suki clapped his hands and gathered the attention of all the students in the classroom. In our academy, there is a so-called tripping double blade partnership system. That is a system where two people are paired up to carry out various types of training and development. Therefore, the academy has a requirement. Until the end of this week, everyone has to work hard to decide on an official partner. Of course, if everyone is unable to make a decision by then, we will arbitrarily let the remaining people partner up. At that time, you won't be able to make your own choice. By the way, don't casually choose your partner just because you look down on the tripping double blade system. Teacher Little Bunny blinked. In order to deepen the understanding between tripping double blade, the school hopes to let a group of tripping double blade spend all the time together as much as possible. That is to say, people who become tripping double blade will not have the opportunity to act separately in the school life in the future, even the dormitory. Hearing Teacher Little Bunny's words, in the classroom, many of the students who were still thinking that it was not essential suddenly became serious. This is a very serious matter. Ivanley also seemed to be seriously thinking about it. Even the dormitory is the same. It's best if it's someone who can get along well. Otherwise, life here will really become very difficult. Noah, on the other hand, rubbed his temples in distress, feeling more or less put in a difficult position. It was not that Noah was dissatisfied with having to have a daily and non-daily partner, nor was it that Noah wanted to be a lone ranger. In fact, Noah was not without experience in this aspect. When he was a child, when he was still in Fairy Tale, Noah went on missions with Alusha, Mira, and Lisanna more than once. In the world of The Black Bullet, the police also acted as partners in pairs. Although Noah had never seriously chosen a partner, in order to let the cursed child, in Fairy Tale, cooperate better with his partner in battle, this topic was added to the usual training by Noah. While teaching the children, he also learned a lot. Therefore, for the two of them to act as partners, Noah did not have any difficulties. However, this world was still a completely foreign world to Noah. Other than Ivanley, Noah did not even have a friend that he could talk to. Just like Ivanley said, if they didn't get along well with each other, they would definitely have a hard time if they formed a partnership. If possible, Noah also hoped that he could have a partner that he could get along with. In that case, just the aspect of living together would be a lot better. In a week's time, in such an environment where he basically did not know anyone, would he be able to find a partner that he liked? Noah was distressed in this aspect. In the next moment, this distress was immediately shattered by Teacher Little Rabbit's words, and it reorganized and changed into another distress. The official, double-tripping blade will be determined on the weekend. At that time, the dormitory will also be adjusted so that the two people who are double-tripping blade will live together. Before the weekend, everyone will form a temporary, double-tripping blade, and live together for a week. Teacher Little Rabbit said with a mischievous smile. Moreover, that smile was directed at Noah. Seeing this smile, Noah's heart suddenly filled with an ominous premonition. It turned out that this premonition was completely correct. So then, since it is a temporary, double-tripping blade, I will decide who you should be temporary partners with. Teacher Little Rabbit jumped up and said such a sentence word by word. Until the official, double-tripping blade, is decided, everyone will temporarily form a temporary, double-tripping blade, with your desk mate. When these words came out, Noah did not know how others would react. Noah only knew that at this moment, his face completely stiffened and became very ugly. My desk mate. At the same time, Ivan also reflexively turned his head and looked to his side. When he saw Noah's stiff face, his delicate face suddenly became very interesting. Hey 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 hey. Screams, very quickly, resounded throughout the classroom. Ivan jumped up with a red face and shouted in Teacher Little Rabbit's direction. Wait! Teacher Little Rabbit. This is not right. Oh hey hey hey. What's wrong? Teacher Little Rabbit still had a smile on her face. What's wrong, isn't it obvious? Ivan's voice involuntarily increased, and his face became redder and redder. My deskmate is Noah, do you want us to live together? That's great, isn't it? Teacher Little Rabbit spread out her hands, with a "you're lucky" look. The guy living together is not only very handsome, but also very strong. If you cultivate a good relationship, then won't you feel very safe? Indeed. Noah is very handsome and very strong, he makes people feel very safe. Ivan wavered for a moment but then immediately shook his head desperately. No, no. That's not the problem. Teacher, we have 3 people here. Noah was the first to regain his composure and stood up. Since the school's dormitory arrangement is based on the double-tripping blade arrangement, then we should live in a dormitory with 2 people, right? Ivan immediately nodded, but in the end, it only made Teacher Little Rabbit laugh as usual. It's okay, there's always a way. Anyway, it's only for a week, you guys can endure it, okay? You just wanted to enjoy it, right? Noah was so agitated that he raised his voice, and then looked at Julie, who had been silent and secretly sizing him up. Julie, classmate, you think so too, right? 3 people living together will cause all kinds of problems, right? Julie tilted her head, as if thinking about something, and after a while, she said with an expressionless face. I'm fine with it. Noah and Ivan were petrified on the spot. Ha 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 ha. Teacher Little Rabbit held her stomach and laughed out loud. Then it's decided. Noah, who did not want to see Ivan's current expression, covered his head and lowered it. Now, Noah was incomparably certain. Staying in this school was definitely a wrong decision. Chapter 194. Wow, Julie's skin is so white. Ivan's is also very white. It's much worse than Julie's. But Ivan's here is bigger than mine. Really? Ah. Don't touch. Listening to the unsettling sounds coming from the bathroom, Noah, who was sitting at the small round table, held a cup of tea with a bitter expression. Undoubtedly, it's a double room, why did I have to squeeze in? What's going on with this school? At this time, Noah returned to the dormitory room assigned to him, Ivan, and Julie. It was already dark outside. The fluorescent lights in the dormitory released light, illuminating the room that was supposed to be 2 people, but now 3 people were squeezed in. The dormitory in the school was not bad. Not to mention the relatively large area, the room was not only equipped with a bathroom, a hot water cooker, a TV, and a small round table, but also standard dormitory beds. Without looking at the bunk beds, it was not a problem for 3 people to squeeze into such a room. But if there were 1 boy and 2 girls among the 3 people, it would be a big problem. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that except for Noah, the other 2 girls were not only extremely beautiful girls, but also, although one was shy, because of her cheerful and talkative personality, she quickly forgot to guard against him. The other one was even more exaggerated, she did not have the slightest intention of guarding against him. The evidence was that Noah was clearly in this room. In the bathroom, Ivanli and Julie were still having a great time. Their voices that made one think of fluttering in the wind were not suppressed at all. It was obvious that they either did not care about what they heard, or had completely forgotten that they were also here. How am I going to spend this week? Noah could only sigh. he began to divert his attention and began to immerse his mind in the information revealed by Teacher Little Rabbit during the day. Rank. Daybreak star pattern also has ranks. This was something that Noah only found out today. Not only Noah, but also the new students in the school did not seem to know until today. Noah couldn't help but become very interested in this. If the daybreak star pattern also had a level, and he was currently only at rank I, then, if he had the opportunity to obtain the sublimation instrument, to increase its level, wouldn't he be able to obtain a certain level of enhancement? Noah didn't care much about the strengthening of his body. After all, Noah's body had already been strengthened by the protozoan virus. In terms of his body, it was unlikely that the strengthening that Noah could obtain would increase his strength significantly. What Noah really cared about was the strengthening of his spirit. It was an enhancement that had never happened before. And now, the daybreak star pattern had such an effect. Not only did it strengthen Noah's spirit, but it also increased his magic power and magic power. That was a situation that couldn't get any better. I also have a general understanding of where the limit ability came from. The daybreak star rune had the ability to level up. Just like how soul materialization turned into weapon soul form, the ability to level up also turned into downgrade. However, first of all, Noah's daybreak star pattern was still at rank I, so it couldn't be downgraded. Second of all, even if it could be downgraded, Noah's physique that could eliminate all negative effects would also be immune to this negative effect on the owner. Thus, under these two contradictions, the limit ability that could allow Noah to downgrade on his own was derived. Moreover, the target of downgrade was no longer just rank, but Noah's various abilities. In addition, Noah's physique did not allow Noah to have abilities that would only have negative effects on him. Thus, the limit evolved again, with the addition of the ability to allow the restricted ability to automatically strengthen itself, becoming an ability that was also beneficial to the owner. It passed through the exclusion range of Noah's physique and was possessed by Noah. Of course, without the mutation caused by the conflict between Noah's physique and the daybreak star rune, the downgrade ability would not have evolved into a limit ability. The daybreak star rune that was just implanted were all rank I. Noah recalled the various aspects of the enhancement he received when the daybreak star rune was implanted and activated the limit ability. Under the effect of the limit ability, Noah's physical, mental, and other aspects of his physique were all adjusted to rank I level. Magic power, a power that a surpasser could not possess, was all restricted, allowing these restricted powers to enter a state of automatic enhancement. In any case, these powers would not be used unless it was necessary. Thus, rather than being idle, it would be better to use the limit ability on them and let them automatically enhance themselves. Therefore, the limit ability was still very good, and it was also very helpful to Noah. After this limit ability, Noah was really only a rank I surpasser. Compared to the other rank I surpassers, Noah's physical, mental, and other external conditions were the same as the others. However, Noah's combat experience, combat skills, and perception ability, these internal conditions could not be limit ability. And Noah, who possessed all these, was destined to be someone that an ordinary level 1 surpasser couldn't compare to. Gotcha. At this time, the sound of the bathroom door being opened sounded. Wait. Julie. Then, Ivan's voice mixed with shock and anxiety also passed into Noah's ears. Noah subconsciously turned his head and looked in the direction of the bathroom. Then, the scene that entered his eyes almost made Noah, who had unknowingly brought the teacup to his mouth, directly spit out the tea in his mouth. The first thing that entered Noah's eyes was the slender and white, jade feet and thighs that seemed to be made of pearls. Then, Julie's full appearance that appeared in front of Noah was also exposed in front of Noah's eyes. Because she had just come out of the bath, Julie's thin clothes were tightly stuck to her skin, making her slender body's curves clearly visible. Even the buttons on her clothes were buttoned in the wrong place, causing Julie to reveal a lot of her white skin. And besides these, Julie's body did not have any other concealment. Yes. Julie was actually only wearing a shirt on her upper body, the rest of her body was not wearing anything. In this state, this beautiful girl who had caused the entire school's freshmen to exclaim in admiration appeared in front of Noah. How could Noah remain calm? Moreover, behind Julie's back, Ivan seemed to want to prevent Julie from appearing in front of Noah in this state. In the end, because he couldn't make it in time, he chased out of the bathroom with only a bath towel wrapped around his body. Looking at Julie's thin shirt, the skin of her thighs and shoulders were all exposed to the air, and Ivan wrapped in a bath towel, the appearance of his arms, thighs, and shoulders were even more thoroughly exposed. Noah's brain began to crash. Julie. Ivan glanced at Noah, whose brain had crashed, and pulled Julie with a red face. Idiot, idiot, idiot. How can you come out of the bathroom like this? Julie tilted her head with a puzzled face. Is there a problem with my pajamas? There is a big problem. Ivan pulled Julie, as if to avoid Noah's sight, and hurriedly walked towards the bathroom. Quickly go back and change your clothes. Wait. Being suddenly pulled by Ivan, Julie suddenly lost her balance and fell to the ground. In a panic, Julie's hand unconsciously pulled forward and pulled the bath towel on Ivan's body. Paw! The next second, Julie fell to the ground. A bath towel floated down and covered Julie's head. Time paused. Ivan, as if frozen on the spot, was frozen on the spot, his eyes open to the widest they had ever been. When Noah saw the large amount of white skin in front of his eyes, his heart stopped for a second or two. The whole world seemed to have lost the existence of sound at this moment, falling into an oppressive silence. After a long time, Noah stood up like a robot. His body was stiff as he walked past the fallen Julie and the petrified Ivan. He opened the door, walked out, and gently closed the door. "Aw!" Screams from inside the room resounded. Chapter 195. There was no distinction between men and women in the dormitory of Holang Academy. Whether it was the male dormitory or the female dormitory, although they were not close to each other, they were still in the same building. When entering through the dormitory door, the first place the students arrived at was the common lounge of the dormitory students. There, not only were there luxurious items such as televisions, tables, chairs, and even sofas, but there were also magazines, comics, and games on the bookshelves in the corner for entertainment. In addition, snacks and drinks were also self-service. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was a place for people to enjoy themselves. Studying in this school could exempt one from tuition, lodging, and food expenses. There was also a place for people to rest and play. If one could continue to study in this school, they would be able to survive without having to do any work. The treatment was extremely good. Not to mention, the school also provided 100,000 yen for the students' living expenses every month. Sigh, and under such extremely enjoyable treatment, in the lounge, Noah sat on the sofa and sighed, and said such a sentence in despair. I might as well just sleep outside tonight. That wasn't impossible. After all, Noah had lived in almost all kinds of deep mountains and forests in order to practice crush. At that time, if Noah felt that he would stay in this place for a long time, he would build a wooden house or something, and if he did not stay for long, he would simply find a tree and sleep directly on it. In any case, he could not return to the dormitory now. Otherwise, not to mention how Ivanli would react, Noah would definitely not be able to look at Ivanli directly. Thinking of this, Noah's mind could not help but recall the scene of Ivanli's seductive naked body and a pair of full breasts. His heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and he quickly shook his head. No, I have to calm down first. Noah, who was full of distress, did not notice that at the entrance of the dormitory, two girls were coming in together from the outside. Ha! As soon as they entered the dormitory, one of the two girls inadvertently saw Noah sitting on the sofa and stopped. "Little Ba, what happened to you?" The other girl widened her big, watery eyes and looked at her companion strangely. Then, she followed her companion's line of sight and turned to look at Noah. Isn't that?" The young girl called Little Ba nodded. After a moment of silence, she said, "Yeah, I'll go over first. You can go back first if you want." As soon as she finished speaking, the girl named Ba didn't wait for the girl she called Ya to respond. She impatiently lifted her feet and walked towards Noah. "Wait! Little Ba." The girl named Ya finally reacted, and hurriedly followed him. Noah, who was agonizing over whether to go out for the night or to go back later, sensed a commotion not far away. He raised his head and looked ahead. He saw two young girls approaching him. They were two very unique young girls. The one walking in front of Noah was a young girl with long, flowing black hair. She didn't hide her destination at all. Rather than saying she was cute, she was more like a beautiful young girl. Not only did the young girl have a beautiful figure, she also exuded a mature and awe-inspiring aura. She gave people the feeling that although they were playmates of the same age, she was an adult. Coupled with her heroic figure, her presence was unusually strong. Walking behind the heroic young girl, who seemed to be chasing after the former in a panic, was an existence that contrasted sharply with the other girl. She was a petite girl with a somewhat childish look on her face. Her hair was cut to her shoulders and seemed to have been tied into two small braids in front of her. She was different from the other girl who exuded an awe-inspiring temperament. Her entire body was filled with a delicate feeling that made people involuntarily want to protect her. However, this young girl also had a presence that others couldn't ignore. Her presence wasn't the same as the former's, but a pair of extremely eye-catching, full and round breasts. Undoubtedly, her figure was more delicate and petite than the average person, but her round breasts were not only bigger than Ivan's, they were even far above those so-called adults. From Noah's point of view, among the people he knew, only Mira and Mugging could compare to her. Noah also knew these two young girls. They had entered the school today like Noah, and they had introduced themselves in the classroom. They were Noah's classmates. If he remembered correctly, the heroic young girl with long black hair was called Orange Bar, and the extremely delicate young girl with a great figure was called Swagaya. Under Noah's gaze, Orange Bar and Swagaya began to slow down and approach, as if they knew that Noah had noticed them approaching. However, Orange Bar still walked towards Noah confidently, and only slowed down slightly. Swagaya, on the other hand, hid behind Orange Bar as if she was a little scared. She followed Orange Bar and walked in front of Noah. "Hello." Orange Bar didn't lose his heroic spirit, but also didn't lose his manners as he nodded at Noah. "I'm Orange Bar. I still remember the names of my classmates." Noah scratched his cheek. "As for me, I don't think I need to introduce myself, right? Of course, even if I want to forget you, it should be very difficult." Orange Bar smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I'll call you Noah. Is that okay?" "Of course." Noah nodded, and then turned his gaze to Swagaya, who was hiding behind Orange Bar. "You're Swagaya, right?" Swagaya seemed to be frightened. Her pretty face turned red, and her body shrank behind Orange Bar. "Ah." Noah looked at Orange Bar with a puzzled expression. "I'm sorry, you only went to a girls' school before, so she's not good at dealing with boys." Orange Bar lowered his head and apologized to Noah. "Please don't mind. You're too polite." This time, it was Noah's turn to laugh bitterly. "No matter what, you should sit down first. It's better to talk this way, isn't it?" Then we won't stand on ceremony. Orange Bar took Swaegaya's hand and sat down on the sofa opposite Noah. Putting Tachaba aside for the time being, when Swaegaya sat down, the pair of round breasts in front of her chest that had a strong sense of presence jiggled up and down uncontrollably, causing Noah to involuntarily glance over. After pausing for less than a second, he hurriedly shifted his gaze away and silently cursed himself. There was no helping it. Ivan's naked body was too stimulating, and it happened not long ago. It made Noah inexplicably pay attention to this aspect. At that moment, Noah deliberately coughed and asked suspiciously, "Is there something you need from me? It should be considered a busybody." Orange Bar sized up Noah and said, "You seem to be very distressed just now. Is that because of your roommates?" "There's nothing to hide." Noah's face turned bitter, and he sighed again. "Or rather, it would be strange if you weren't distressed when two of your roommates are of the opposite sex, right?" That's true." Orange Bar said awkwardly and somewhat approvingly. "I just want to ask, is there anything I can help with?" "Help?" Noah said with a somewhat uncertain tone. "Do you want to help me? I'm indeed a bit of a busybody, right?" Orange Bar nodded heavily with a serious expression on his face. "However, young men and women living in the same room is a bit worrying." "Worried?" Noah's face was suddenly filled with a strange expression, and he laughed awkwardly. "Although I can roughly guess what you're worried about, we just met today, and I don't ask you to believe me. However, if it was a man and a woman who were both alone, then it would be a different story. But there are two girls in my room, so it's impossible to make a move on two girls at the same time, right?" That's true." Orange Bar lowered his head with an embarrassed expression. Swaegaya couldn't help but laugh out loud. When she realized that Noah was looking at her, her pretty face turned completely red. She hid her face in Orange Bar's arms, and after a while, she secretly raised her head and quietly sized up Noah. Seeing Swaegaya's performance, Noah didn't know how to react. In the morning, Julie had been secretly observing him from the side, and now it was Swaegaya's turn. His school life was really tough. Chapter 196. Speaking of which, your strength is really strong. At this time, Orange Bar deliberately changed the topic as if to change the atmosphere, but when it came to this topic, his face couldn't help but be serious. His eyes stared at Noah, and he said in amazement. "Teacher Bunny said that Daisuke-sensei is a level 3 surpasser, and he graduated from this school after 3 years of combat training. Compared to level I, who has just started and hasn't received any combat training, you can't compare at all. It's really hard to believe that you can defeat Daisuke-sensei with the strength of an ordinary person." Swaegaya raised her head from Orange Bar's embrace, and also looked at Noah. Her eyes were filled with amazement and envy. It was no wonder that Orange Bar and Swaegaya were so surprised. If they really knew how strong a surpasser was, and how strong a level 3 was, then they wouldn't just be surprised, they would be in disbelief. The Daybreak Star rune strengthened the body and spirit of a surpasser differently according to the level. Specifically speaking, the strengthening through the Daybreak Star rune was actually something similar to multiplication. For example, level I Daybreak Star rune could strengthen a person's index by 10, if level 2 would strengthen a person by 20, and if level 3 would strengthen a person by 30. Assuming that a normal person's strength is 1, then when this person becomes a surpasser and enters level 1, after being strengthened by 10, this person's strength will manifest as 10. And at level 2, this person's strength would naturally be 20, and at level 3, this person's strength would be 30. Noah's actions were equivalent to using the 1 of a normal person's strength to fight against a monster that had undergone many years of training. The monster's strength was definitely not just 1, but 4 or 5. The monster's strength had even reached 120 or 150 after being strengthened by the 30 of level 3. It was more than 100 times stronger than a normal person. After all, if a surpasser's body and mind were not trained to a certain level, it would be impossible for the Daybreak Star rune to evolve successfully. Therefore, Daisuke, who has successfully promoted to level 3, his strength level is not only 1, but also 4 and 5. Under such circumstances, multiplied by level 3 by 30, wouldn't that be 120 and 150? To be able to defeat someone who was more than 100 times stronger than him in terms of strength, speed, agility, reflexes, and so on, was it not shocking enough? To be able to defeat such an opponent, your martial arts and combat experience have shocked me greatly. Orange Bar's eyes were filled with sincerity as he sighed. I have also practiced martial arts for many years. I thought that I would be considered quite strong among my peers, but compared to you, I am like a child. Noah, who originally had a nonchalant expression on his face, became slightly interested. Have you practiced martial arts as well? My family runs a dojo. Orange Bar nodded. The Orange School of 18 Arts that I belong to is a famous school that focuses on ancient martial arts and incorporates various other martial arts. Therefore, I can see how shocking the skills you used in the battle that day were. If possible, I really want to spar with you. Saying so, Orange Bar's face also showed an unconvinced expression. Obviously, he was not just saying it, he really wanted to do it. Little Bar. Suigaya called out worriedly. On the other hand, Noah glanced at Orange Bar, whose face was full of unconvinced and awe-inspiring, with some surprise, and then suddenly smiled. This school is a school that cultivates combat skills. I believe that there will be plenty of opportunities to spar with classmates. That's true. Orange Bar was also eager to give it a try. That's really exciting. With amazing combat skills and combat experience, and being able to defeat level 3 at the level of an ordinary person, and now with level 1 enhancement, how strong is Noah? This was something that Orange Bar especially wanted to know. He believed that this was something that the others who knew about Noah's deeds also wanted to know. However, if these people knew of Noah's true strength after the limitation was lifted, what kind of reaction would they have? Thinking of this, Noah could not help but laugh. Although the Daybreak Star rune's enhancement to the human body existed in the form of multiplication, Noah knew that there was a limit to it. Otherwise, how could Noah's body, which had been strengthened to a frightening degree by the level 1 virus, only grow by a negligible degree after being strengthened to 10 times by the level 1 virus? Therefore, once a surpasser trained their body and spirit to the extent that even the Daybreak Star rune could not strengthen them, then the Daybreak Star rune would also be completely helpless, right? Of course, that was something that an ordinary person could not do. Noah could only be considered an anomaly. Next, Noah and Orange Bar began to discuss martial arts and combat. Suigaya, who could only watch Noah and Orange Bar communicate, sat obediently at the side, secretly sizing up Noah's slightly determined face, her pair of watery eyes flashing slightly. Gotcha! Gently opening the door, Noah poked his head in from outside and looked into the room. About an hour had passed since the lights out time, so there was naturally no light in the room, but only a dim light. Noah listened carefully for a while, until he heard breathing sounds coming from inside the room. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. He tiptoed into the room, and very carefully closed the door. His actions were like that of a thief, making Noah feel a headache. Going back to my own room like a thief, what the hell is this? With this kind of thoughts that could easily make people feel helpless, Noah walked into the room and looked at the direction of the bed. At this time, the two girls who were Noah's roommates were already deeply asleep on the bottom bunk of the bed that was divided into two bunks. Julie was still wearing the white shirt, her white thighs were directly exposed to the air, her body was on the side, and she slept very soundly. Beside Julie, Ivanli was wearing a set of pajamas with floral patterns. The style of the pajamas was a combination of very ordinary clothes and pants. Who knows if it was because he considered that there was a girl in his roommate, so he chose such a conservative style. He hugged Julie and let out rhythmic breathing sounds. Looking at the sleeping faces of Ivanli and Julie, Noah couldn't help but smile, and took off his uniform jacket. Just when Noah wanted to climb to the top bunk to sleep, a cold voice echoed in the extremely silent room. "Don't you plan to say something?" Noah's movement froze. On the bottom bunk, Ivanli, who was hugging Julie, stared at Noah with a pair of gem-like eyes. Although her face was a little red, there was no shyness in her eyes, only anger. "I thought you were going to sleep somewhere else tonight." Hee hee. Noah laughed dryly, then immediately sighed as if he gave up, and his body relaxed. "If apologizing can solve the problem, I don't mind doing it." "I didn't ask you to apologize." Ivanli also sighed, half squinted at Noah, and her tone was more or less filled with dissatisfaction. "That's not your fault, don't worry, I won't blame you, but..." Ivanli's pretty face was a little redder, and she stuttered. "No matter what you saw, you have to forget it." "Forget? If I can forget, why would I be so worried?" Noah could only yell this in his mind, and made a gesture of surrender. "I should be the one saying this. If Ivanli can forget what happened today and get along with me like before, I will be very grateful." "That's good." Ivanli turned her head and hugged Julie. "Good night." Seeing that Ivanli didn't bother him anymore, Noah admired Ivanli's generosity, and at the same time, he spoke softly. "Good night." Not long after, Ivanli once again breathed rhythmically. Looking at the sleeping Ivanli and Julie, who were as cute as a doll, Noah smiled after a while. "I wish you all sweet dreams." Chapter 197. Chirp 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 chirp. When the morning birds chirped and the soft sunlight shone into the room through the gap in the curtains, Noah woke up from his sleep. Not sure if it was because of the change of environment, Noah woke up earlier than usual. After rubbing his black hair, he sat up. Noah poked his head out from the edge of the bed and looked at his lower bunk. He thought Ivanli and Julie were still sleeping, but he only saw an empty bed. Even the quilt was folded and placed neatly at the end of the bed. Seeing this, Noah was slightly surprised. He is a lot more relaxed than before. Usually, when two people who had only known each other for a day moved around him, no matter how small their movements were, Noah's vigilance would wake him up. Ivanka and Julie were obviously on their feet. But when the two got up, Noah, who slept on the upper bunk, didn't wake up, which was enough to prove that Noah was indeed more relaxed than usual. "It seems that the way Ivanli and Julie slept last night made me relax a lot." Noah scratched his cheek and didn't care about this anymore. After all, no matter how relaxed his vigilance was, once someone approached Noah with hostility, malice, or even murderous intent and attacked Noah, Noah would still wake up. Therefore, vigilance in this regard was not necessary for Noah. Instead, it would make Noah less likely to be woken up and have a good night's sleep. Immediately, Noah stretched and got out of bed. In order to prevent any trouble, Noah, Ivanli, and Julie had already stipulated that if they wanted to change clothes, they could only change in the locker room. Following the rules set yesterday, Noah yawned while walking to the locker room and opened it. The next moment, Noah finally began to regret his idea. He regretted his excessive vigilance. It was an unnecessary thought. Otherwise, with Noah's perception ability, he would definitely be able to detect a presence in the locker room at this time. Therefore, while yawning and regretting in his heart, Noah's face began to tremble. In the locker room, the person who came before Noah maintained the appearance of taking off the shirt she was wearing just now. She slightly widened her deep ruby eyes and stared straight at Noah without saying anything. Noah could clearly see that on the petite body, except for the lower half of the body, there was nothing else. Fortunately, the silver hair spread behind the person, covering the entire back of the person. The shirt that the person had just taken off was also in the hands of the person, covering the front of the person's body, which just happened to cover the person's private important parts. Therefore, Noah was still in the area, not as dangerous as when he saw Ivanley's naked body last night. At the next moment, the other party's flat voice sounded. But at that moment, Noah heard an indifferent voice. "Good morning." Noah reacted, showing a forced smile that couldn't be more forced. Good morning. Julie was still expressionless as she spoke. "Noah also needs to change clothes." Yes. Noah was almost reflexively answering Julie's question. "Then can you wait outside for a while?" Not knowing if it was Noah's illusion, even Julie's expressionless face had a little bit of redness at this moment. "If I change clothes in front of Noah, I will be very embarrassed." Noah, who was in a state of shutdown, finally woke up. After bitterly laughing twice, he slowly closed the door. Looking at the cold door in front of him, Noah was speechless for a long time. After a while, he covered his face with regret. When will this week end? On both sides of the small round table, Noah and Julie, who had already changed into their uniforms, sat opposite each other, and looked at each other. From Julie's mouth, Ivan seemed to have insisted on practicing swordsmanship in the morning. Today, he was like Noah, because he came to an unfamiliar environment and woke up early. Just like before, he simply went out to practice. Julie had rushed from abroad to attend the entrance ceremony yesterday, so because of the time difference, she went to bed very early last night and woke up very early today. Therefore, what happened next happened. Looking at Julie's expressionless face, because of what just happened, Noah couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. After taking a deep breath, he met Julie's deep red eyes. "Oh right, because Ivan was also there yesterday, I couldn't ask, but Julie, I have always wanted to ask you a question." Julie's expression didn't change at all. Only her lips moved like a real doll as she nodded her head. "Please ask." "Why did you want to sit next to me yesterday?" Noah asked straightforwardly. "You must have deliberately sat next to me, right? You have been secretly observing me, right?" For a moment, Julie's pair of beautiful eyes fluctuated, and the surrounding atmosphere also changed. Julie maintained a fixed look at Noah, seemed to be lost in thought, and after a while, she answered. "Because Noah is very strong." Noah was suddenly stunned. After hesitating, he asked in a low voice. "Is it because I am very strong, so you pay attention to me?" Julie didn't hesitate in the slightest. It was impossible to tell what she was thinking as a nostalgic expression appeared on her small and delicate face. "Dad is also very strong, like Noah, very, very strong." Noah's heart moved, and he was slightly relieved. Julie, who usually had a difficult expression, showed a touch of nostalgia. Thinking about it, Julie's father should be very important to her, right? Because I am as strong as Julie's father, so Julie pays attention to me. This is really like the behavior of a child. What Julie said next made her seem even more like a child. "Can I also be like that?" Julie lowered her head slightly and said. "Can I also become as strong as Dad and Noah?" For some reason, Noah heard a trace of longing and sadness in Julie's emotionless voice. This made the expression on Noah's face gradually become serious. Looking at Julie, who lowered her head, he couldn't help but reach out and touch her head. Ding-ling. The sound of the bell also sounded. Julie raised her head and looked at Noah with a bit of disbelief, as if she didn't expect Noah to suddenly do this. A strong sense of longing can make people stronger. In front of Julie, Noah said with a smile. If Julie has such a strong sense of longing, then she can definitely become stronger. Julie's eyes rippled, and on her head, a silver hook swayed like a tail. After a long time, Julie spat out a word. Yeah, Rollercoasters Academy, first grade classroom, good morning. Good morning. While saying good morning to each other, Noah and Julie walked into the classroom together. Under the gaze of everyone around them, they walked to their seats. Noah. Julie. There, Ivan was sitting in his seat and waving in the direction of Noah and Julie. There were also some students around him, and they seemed to have been talking until just now. Although it was only a day, Ivan's cheerful personality and good social skills seemed to have made him like a fish in water in this class, and he made a lot of friends. You guys are so slow. As soon as he sat down, Ivan complained to Noah and Julie. I thought you guys were already here, so I came directly. Do you know how lonely I was after not seeing you guys? Lonely? Noah glanced at Ivan. Weren't you chatting happily with your classmates just now? It's because I'm lonely that I want to find someone to chat with. Ivan said this as if it was a matter of fact. Just as Noah wanted to say something, at the door of the classroom, a sweet and cheerful voice came into the classroom. Good morning, he saw Teacher Little Rabbit holding a baton. She skipped in from the outside, bringing bad news. Today's first class is extracurricular training. Everyone gather at the school gate. Chapter 198. Here. Everyone, gather around Teacher Little Rabbit. In front of the school gate, Teacher Little Rabbit, who was still in her maid outfit with a pair of rabbit ears, waved her hands in an extremely exaggerated manner, as if she was afraid that others wouldn't see her. Those who didn't know would think that she was standing at the edge of a cliff, waving her arms with all her might as if she was about to fall. It was very comical. However, with such a conspicuous target, the group of students didn't have to worry about not being able to find a place to gather. One by one, they ran over from not far away and lined up in front of Teacher Little Rabbit. At this time, whether male or female, all of them had changed into gym clothes that were convenient for exercise. Noah, who was standing at the edge of the team, was frowning because of his gymnastics attire. When he sensed the curious gazes from all directions from time to time, he couldn't help but hold his left hand with his right hand and hide his left hand behind his back. It couldn't be helped. Noah's left hand was very eye-catching. It wasn't a big deal, but Noah's entire left hand, starting from his shoulder, to his wrist, and even the back of his hand, was tightly wrapped in white bandages. Seeing Noah's left hand wrapped in white bandages, which couldn't be hidden because he was wearing a short-sleeved gymnastic suit, the surrounding students cast curious glances at Noah's hand. What happened to your hand? Standing beside Noah, Ivan also sized up Noah's bandaged left hand and asked. Did you get hurt? Standing on the other side of Noah, Julie also cast a concerned gaze. A pair of deep red eyes stared straight at Noah. Although there wasn't much emotion in them, there was a trace of doubt surging in them. Obviously, Julie was also concerned about this problem. It wasn't just Ivan and Julie. Orange Bar and Sway Gaoya, who he had just met last night, were also around Noah. Although studying in this kind of school means that you're already prepared to get hurt, with the enhanced recovery of a surpasser, injuries will heal faster. However, if there's a problem, it's better to ask for leave. Orange Bar came closer and suggested. How about it? Do you need me to help you ask for leave from Teacher Little Rabbit? You're all worrying too much. Noah helplessly shook his head. He didn't hide it anymore and directly raised his hand that was wrapped in bandages from the cuffs to the back of his left hand with a nostalgic smile. This is an injury from a long time ago. It's healed long ago, but because it left a scar, it doesn't look too good, so I wrapped it up. When he was young, in a conflict with the Phantom Lord during his first mission, in order to save Alusha, Noah had used his body to block the attack of the Phantom Lord sorcerer, and was severely injured of him. That injury eventually healed, but the scar remained on Noah's arm and accompanied him for many years. For a long time, Noah appeared in people's sight wearing long-sleeved clothes and a jacket, so basically, no one noticed that Noah's hand was always wrapped in bandages to hide the scar. But this time, after changing into a gym suit, there was no way to hide it. On the side, Julie tilted her head and looked at Noah. "Are you okay?" Looking at Julie, who looked up at him like a small animal, Noah stroked her head with a relaxed expression on his face. "It's okay, don't worry." Feeling the big hand stroking her head, the ahog on Julie's head suddenly shook. Even though her face was still expressionless, her good mood was clearly felt by the people around her. Ivan glanced at Noah, then glanced at Julie, and then put his face in front of Noah with a meaningful look. "When did your relationship with Julie become so good?" "Good." The hand stroking Julie's head didn't stop, and Noah tilted his head in puzzlement. "Very good." Ivan's eyes were half closed, and he smiled lazily. "Didn't you notice it?" Noah and Julie looked at each other and shook their heads, making Ivan speechless. "Is everyone here?" At this time, Teacher Little Rabbit's refreshing voice sounded. "Then, the content of today's first lesson is physical enhancement." Physical enhancement? The students present were startled and looked at each other. "That's right. It's physical enhancement." Teacher Little Rabbit jumped up and down and began to explain. Everyone knows that the Daybreak Star tattoo can strengthen one's body through something similar to multiplication. Of course, the more the surpasser who has the Daybreak Star tattoo implanted in their body, the better the effects will be, right? The expressions of the students were a little relieved as they nodded. Using the previous example, all of the students who had just become surpassers were only at 1 in all aspects of their physical abilities. Some of them were even below 1 in terms of physical strength, endurance, strength, reflexes, and speed. Then, under such circumstances, even with the enhancement of level 1 multiplied by 10, at most, the physical ability in that area would only be 10, or even less than 10. However, if the student's physical abilities could be trained from level 1 to level 2 or level 3, then after multiplying by level 1 by level 10, even if the Daybreak Star rune hadn't been upgraded, it would still be able to reach level 20 or level 30. Apart from the normal lessons that the students had to go through, Howling Academy's combat training was of the utmost importance. However, physical enhancement and training were also included. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste of the Daybreak Star tattoo's great enhancement effect? Therefore, we first have to start with the most basic physical training. After that, we will continue to train everyone's strength, speed, agility, reflexes, and even the body's ability to resist attacks. Of course, there is also our most important combat training course. Teacher Little Rabbit nodded with a face full of joy. So, what we need to do today is the most basic physical enhancement, which is running. When they heard the word running, many of the students showed blatant rejection. However, if they wanted to increase their physical strength, the simplest, most direct, and most effective method was undoubtedly running. Noah, who had gone through many years of training his physical abilities, could attest to this point. Therefore, Noah was concerned about another aspect. "It's just running." As soon as he spoke, Noah gathered the attention of all the students around him. Oh, as expected of an exception. You asked so directly, but it's good to ask. Teacher Little Rabbit giggled and pointed the baton in her hand at Noah, throwing a flirtatious glance. No matter what, the academy was built to train your combat skills. It's the same even if it's just running. Therefore, there are special rules here. After saying this, Teacher Little Rabbit opened her hand as if to say, "Long live," and pulled open a piece of cloth that had been in her hand at some unknown time. There was only one word written on the cloth. Running. That's right. It's running. Teacher Little Rabbit seemed to be excited as she jumped up. First of all, everyone will run 10 laps around the entire academy. The first to complete 10 laps will be considered to have completed the task. However, in the process of running, if you see someone in your field of vision. Teacher Little Rabbit's smile became even more brilliant, and she spat out words that made people shudder. Don't be shy, just fight your way up. Fight? Many people cried out in surprise. Wait. Teacher. Orange Bar raised his hand and stepped forward. In other words, we have to fight the people around us while running, right? That's right. Teacher Little Rabbit smiled cutely. The rules are very simple. As long as you don't use blaze, you can use any other means. After saying this, Teacher Little Rabbit did not give anyone a chance to ask questions. She jumped to the side and took out a colored firecracker. Then, get ready, begin. Following Teacher Little Rabbit's words, with a pop sound, the sound of the colored firecracker reverberated. The group of students first looked at each other, then immediately rushed out like a fish, scampering outside. Chapter 199. Iowa Dash. Hearing the cold shouts and loud shouts of the students fighting behind him, Noah, who was running alone in a forest path, looked around and couldn't help but feel speechless. Now, there wasn't even a single person beside Noah. Because, as soon as he started running, before Noah could run too far, the students who ran out of the school gate with Noah immediately scurried away as if they had met the god of plague. Not long after, they all ran away without a trace. Obviously, no matter what, Noah's classmates were not willing to appear in Noah's field of vision and become Noah's opponents. After all, even the level 3 school teacher wasn't a match for Noah, who only displayed the strength of an ordinary person. These were only level 1 students who had just started training. How could they want to fight with Noah? With this mentality, as soon as they started running, the people around Noah all ran away without a trace. Of course, it wasn't that all the students didn't want to fight with Noah. No matter what, these students were still young and vigorous boys and girls. There were also some who weren't convinced by Noah, or who wanted to prove their strength by defeating Noah. In the end, the dream was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. How could these children, who were just ordinary middle school students before the Daybreak Star Rune, be a match for Noah? As a result, the students who rushed towards Noah in a burst of "Hi-ya" filled with vigor were all kicked away by Noah in the next second in a burst of "Wah-wah," even louder screams. With the strengthening of the Daybreak Star Rune, presumably, Noah's kick would at most make these students feel a bit of pain and wouldn't cause them any injuries. Noah knew that in his class, there were people like Ivanley who had experience in learning swordsmanship and other martial arts. There were even people like Orange Bar who belonged to a certain school of martial arts. In the future, these people would become the leaders of this batch of surpassers. These people would definitely be like Orange Bar, challenging Noah because of his outstanding battle prowess and skills. They would attempt to continuously improve themselves by challenging the strong. Therefore, Noah was always prepared to deal with the sudden appearance of these people. Noah guessed that these students weren't like the students who didn't dare to challenge Noah. They were afraid of appearing in Noah's field of vision, and they were also afraid that Noah would catch up to them and attack them if they ran in front. Therefore, they deliberately fell behind and ran at the back. They must have deliberately sped up and ran to the front, preparing to use the advantageous terrain to launch an attack on Noah. The school was surrounded by sand dunes, mud fields, and wild forests. Different combat styles would also be affected by the terrain. When Noah ran to the terrain that others were good at, he should be able to meet the real challengers, right? Rustle, just as Noah was thinking about this, the trees that were used to optimize the scenery suddenly shook and made a sound. Noah stopped in his tracks. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, a figure rushed out from behind the shaking trees, like a wild wolf pouncing on its prey. With the sound of the wind, he swung his fist and hammered Noah's body, landing on Noah's body. However, before the attacker could rejoice, his opponent's entire body directly passed through Noah's figure, and the punch landed on empty air. It's actually an afterimage. The attacker's face changed. However, in the next moment, with a "tpa" sound, the attacker felt that his foot was tightly grabbed by a strong palm before it could land on the ground. Oh no! Sensing the danger, the attacker immediately wanted to twist his body and break free from the hand that was grabbing his foot. Too slow. Unfortunately, Noah didn't give the attacker a chance to react. With a strong pull, he pulled the attacker in front of him, clenched his fist, and raised it above his head. Hiya hiya! But just as Noah was about to punch his opponent, another figure suddenly flew out and fell from the sky. As he shouted, he threw a fierce punch towards Noah's body. Noah's fist immediately stopped. He raised his eyebrows and didn't continue to attack. He pulled the attacker's foot and threw the person in his hand out. Moreover, he threw the person in the direction of the other attacker. As a result, the two attackers suddenly collided with each other. Bang! In the muffled sound, two muffled groans were also heard. The two attackers followed the gravitational pull and fell from the air. When they were halfway down, they adjusted their bodies and staggered as they landed on the ground, stabilizing their bodies. Only then did Noah see the full appearance of the two attackers. The first attacker was a short boy who wore a pair of glasses on his face. His eyes were quite fierce, and even his face looked fierce. He gave people a feeling that he was deliberately pretending to be fierce. The second attacker was a taller boy. Compared to the first attacker, he was slightly kinder. However, he exuded a different kind of presence that couldn't be ignored. These two were also Noah's classmates. He remembered that the short boy with glasses was called Oki Hokusaki. The other boy looked quite inconspicuous, but he exuded a presence that couldn't be ignored. If Noah remembered correctly, his name seemed to be Jushu Totoro. Noah, who subconsciously called out the latter's name, narrowed his eyes slightly. On the other side, Jushu Totoro covered his abdomen that was hurt when Oki Hokusaki was thrown onto him. There was a hint of bitterness and helplessness in his laughter. Sure enough, it's not that easy. Idiot. Idiot. The boy named Oki Hokusaki covered his head that hid Jushu Totoro's abdomen and mercilessly scolded his companion. Who told you to shout so loudly when you attacked? It would be strange if others didn't react in time. If I had shouted first, wouldn't they have let go of little tiger? Jushu Totoro stood up. He seemed to be used to his companion's insults and didn't care at all. Actually, they did let go of little tiger. But we also embarrassed ourselves. Oki Hokusaki stood up and snorted coldly. Why did I become a temporary, tripping double blade with an idiot like you? Because we sat together that day. Jushu Totoro retorted. Then, a pair of bright eyes stared at Noah. If that's the case, then I won't say much. Little tiger, do you want to continue? Of course. Oki Hokusaki pushed his glasses and also stared at Noah. No matter who the opponent is, I won't lose. Despite his words, Oki Hokusaki's face was full of seriousness. Obviously, he didn't think that he was invincible. Jushu Totoro, on the other hand, looked at Noah with a different expression. It was an emotion that seemed like interest, but also like mutual appreciation. Noah, who saw Jushu Totoro's gaze, was puzzled. His face curled into a smile. Jushu Totoro, Oki Hokusaki, don't you think the way you greet each other is a little lacking? No. You're wrong. Jushu Totoro's gaze never left Noah. His body was tense and vigilant. We came here only after careful consideration. That's right. Oki Hokusaki assumed an attacking posture and stared at Noah like a tiger eyeing its prey. To defeat you here. Is that so? Compared to Jushu Totoro and Oki Hokusaki, who were extremely vigilant, Noah's posture was very casual. Even his voice sounded very relaxed. Then go ahead and try attacking me. Hearing this, Jushu Totoro and Oki Hokusaki didn't say anything, but their expressions became more and more serious. Hey, Totoro. Oki Hokusaki's body became more and more tense, and his voice trembled. Did you notice? Yes. A drop of sweat slid down Totoro's cheek, and he put on a brave smile. I can't find any flaws at all. What's wrong? Opposite him, Noah suddenly smiled. If you're not going to attack, then I'll go first. Jushu Totoro and Oki Hokusaki's expressions became tense at the same time. They glanced at each other, and in the next second, they made the same decision. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Stomp dash. With a violent stomp, Jushu Totoro and Oki Hokusaki pressed their bodies and rushed forward. Chapter 200. Ha! As the two voices overlapped, two figures threw themselves at Noah like a gust of wind. Noah's body didn't move at all. The wind blew on his face and his bangs swayed, revealing his deep and bright dark eyes. Bang! As soon as he shouted, a gust of wind rose. Ninefold Toru and Yuta Tokusaki, who were charging at Noah with a ferocious momentum, suddenly stomped on the ground. One dodged to the left, the other dodged to the right, and the other rushed to the left. Then, they turned in a half-arc and attacked Noah's side. Noah's eyes flashed. In the next moment, his body took a big step back without warning. Whoosh! Just as Noah's body took a step back, a palm wrapped in strong wind brushed past him and fell on his previous position. Ha! From the cold roar, Noah recognized Kukui's voice. In the next moment, Kukui, who had just hit Noah with his palm, arrived in front of Noah. He quickly took two strange steps and his body turned into a gust of wind, rushing towards Noah again. Dah! Facing Oki, who was pouncing on him, Noah merely smiled. As his feet landed on the ground, a crisp sound rang out from the soles of his feet. With a push, Noah's body was directly pushed out, dodging Oki, who was pouncing on him like a real tiger. Don't forget about me. Just as Noah's body steadied, a loud roar came from behind him. With the sound of wind, it rushed towards Noah's direction. Noah's expression didn't change. His right foot touched the ground lightly again and his toes quickly slid along the road. He narrowly dodged the punch coming from behind. The attacker was Ninefold Toru. Together with Akari Tokusaki, Ninefold Toru and Akari Tokusaki were able to display a decent level of teamwork. Sometimes, they would take the front and the back, sometimes, they would take the left and the right. Sometimes, they would charge at the same time, and sometimes, they would pass each other. Looking at the tacit cooperation between Kujuturu and Oe Hokusaki, these two were obviously not like Noah, Ivanli, and Julie. They only met yesterday when they entered the school. Therefore, Noah felt that Ninefold Toru and Kukui must have known each other for a long time before they entered the school. Moreover, they were obviously trained together and even had the same style. Then, there was only one answer. Not only did Ninefold Toru and Kukui know each other before they entered the school, but it was very likely that they practiced martial arts together. In this way, the problem of Ninefold Toru and Kukui having the same style and skill was solved. If it was someone else, even if they could deal with the pincer attack of these two people, it would be extremely difficult. Unfortunately, Ninefold Toru and Kukui's opponent was Noah. Even if Noah, Kyuhei Totoro, and Kukui Totoro all had the same degree of body strengthening, and Noah deliberately used his ability to limit all aspects of his strength to the level of an ordinary level I. His combat experience and combat skills were not something that Kyuhei Totoro and Kukui Totoro could compare to. What's more, Noah's sensing ability had covered almost all the surrounding areas. As long as there was even the slightest movement, Noah would be able to detect it. Therefore, even if Ninefold Tuyu and Kukui's coordinated attacks were fierce and had the effect of confusing the opponent, it was still ineffective under Noah's inhuman sensing ability. In other words, Ninefold Tuyu and Kukui's every move was clearly projected in Noah's mind. In this case, if they wanted to hit Noah, even a level 3 graduate who had trained in this school for 3 years could not do it. Even if Ninefold Tuyu and Kukui were martial artists, they were still only level I. Want to hit Noah? Easier said than done. This guy is really strong. After several consecutive coordinated attacks, Noah managed to escape danger by a hair's breadth. Ninefold Tuyu's face gradually became dignified. He clenched his teeth and his speed increased a lot. With a shio sound, he turned into an afterimage and shot straight at Noah. Who? However, Noah once again dodged Ninefold Tuyu's attack with a strange arc that ordinary people would not be able to predict. Here. Kukui also overdrew his physical strength to increase his speed. He lowered his body and suddenly pounced. In the end, he still pounced on empty air. On the forest road that was full of trees, the confrontation was getting more and more intense. Ninefold Tuyu and Kukui's speed had increased to the point that every time they moved, there would be a gust of wind. People with poor eyesight would not be able to follow their movements. However, even so, the young man in the gymnastic suit still had a calm smile in his eyes. Occasionally, he would take a step forward, move back, tilt to the side, and rotate. Every time he moved, he would be able to dodge the attacks of the Ninefold Toru and Tokasaki Kue. Over time, Kuju Tuyu and Yuji Tokasaki discovered a fact with some fear. From the beginning of the confrontation to now, Noah had not moved more than 1 meter from his original position. You bastard! Suddenly, Kukui's face turned blue. With a bang, he fiercely stomped on the ground, causing a cloud of dust to rise. Like a whirlwind, he glided around Noah in an arc like lightning and rushed toward Noah, who was in the center. If one were to look down from above, it would seem like Kue Tokasaki was sprinting in a circle with Noah as the center. The speed of his sprint brought up a cloud of smoke and dust, like volcanic ash erupting from an erupting volcano, surrounding Noah in the middle. As for Kukui himself, when the dust was enough to cover Noah's entire field of vision, he swooped down, clenched his hand into a fist, and punched the black shadow in the center, which was covered by the dust. You actually came up with such a trick. You're quite capable. Noah's surprised voice reverberated in the cloud of dust and entered Akui Tokasaki's ears. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on me. After saying that, Kukui, who was rushing toward the black shadow in the center, intended to give his opponent a full blow, saw it. Puchi! As if something was broken, in a tearing sound, a hand flashed out from the black shadow covered by the dust like a ghost and turned into a palm. It brushed past Kukui's fist and gently pressed on Kukui's chest like a leaf floating slowly. Dong! Undoubtedly, the palm seemed to be very light, but the moment it fell on Kukui's body, a dull explosion was heard, as if it came from Kukui's body. Guha! At the same time, Kukui felt an indescribable force hit his chest, causing him to groan. His body flew backward as if he had been hit by a truck. However, Kukui, who was hit by Noah, showed a triumphant smile. Whoosh! Immediately, another figure appeared from the opposite direction. It seemed that it had discussed with Kukui, who had just been sent flying out of the smoke, and it went into the smoke. In a flash, it appeared in front of Noah. It's over. In a violent roar, Ninefold Totoro raised his head, revealing a determined face. Like a longbow that had been pulled to its limit, he pulled a fist behind his back. Then, a scene that surprised Noah appeared. Buzz! He pulled the 9-layer penetrations behind him like a bow that was pulled to its limit. Specks of light flickered around his fist and converged on the 9-layer penetrations. Finally, they condensed into a golden vortex. Hiya! In an instant, Ninefold Torrent let out a loud roar. His fist, which was condensed with a golden vortex, was like a shooting star that disappeared in a flash. Amidst a dull explosion, it landed heavily on Noah's body, who had a surprised expression on his face. In the area shrouded in smoke and dust, a brilliant golden light flashed. Bang! Amidst the sound of the explosion, a storm-like impact wind swept out from the smoke and dust, blowing away all the smoke and dust that shrouded the area. However, it brought along an even denser and more violent smoke and dust, which mixed with the randomly spreading airflow, blew in all directions. Dong! The ground suddenly shook, as if it had been hit by a meteorite. Gravel flew into the sky. Chapter 201. Boom! It was as if a missile had hit the ground. In the midst of the explosion, a violent gust of wind brought countless gravel and dust into the air. The ground trembled slightly, and the surrounding trees seemed to have encountered a storm. The treetops shook violently, and leaves were blown away from the trees as if they were worthless. Along with the expanding gust of wind, the leaves were blown away in all directions. The gravel was falling from the sky. Not far away, Kawaii could only raise his arms to block in front of his body. His body was hit by the gravel of various sizes, and his body was also covered in dust due to the gust of wind. After a long time, Akui Tokusaki slowly lowered the arm in front of his face. He struggled to raise his head with his glasses and looked in front of him. At the spot where Noah was supposed to be standing, a hole with a diameter of at least 4 to 5 meters had replaced the original intact ground. Gravel kept rolling down from the inside of the hole. Ninefold Totoro was standing in the center of the hole, kneeling on one knee. One of his fists was still on the ground, which proved that he was the one who launched the attack. Kawaii covered his chest and stood up from the ground. He looked in the direction of Ninefold Totoro with cold sweat dripping down his face. There was a hint of shock in his eyes. That guy, when did he learn this move? Ugh! Ninefold Totoro, who was in the center of the hole, raised his hand that was dripping with blood due to the cracked skin. His other hand was tightly hugging it, and a trace of pain appeared on his face. Sure enough, even if I've become a surpasser, the burden of this move is still very heavy. Kawaii, who was immersed in the power of Ninefold Totoro's inexplicable attack, quickly realized that something was wrong and woke up with a start. That's not right. Where's that guy? Ninefold Totoro, who was hugging his arm with a painful expression, narrowed his eyes and was shocked. Although the power of this attack was indeed extraordinary, even if it was extremely powerful, this attack was still not enough to shatter a person's body into pieces. Not even a corpse could be seen. Then, where did Noah go? This answer was quickly answered. Not bad. As this voice sounded, Kuju Totoro and Kwai Totoro raised their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. It was a sound that had not yet dissipated from the edge of the deep crater that had been created by his fist in front of the 9-layer penetrations. Not long after, the smoke and dust slowly dissipated. Noah, who was a little dirty, appeared in front of Totoro Yujue and Akui Totoro. His figure looked very haggard, but there were almost no injuries on his body. Looking at Noah's position, how could Totoro and Totoro not know what had happened? Under the protection of Yujie Hokusaki, the sure kill punch of Ninefold Torrent missed. In other words, at the critical moment, Noah dodged Ninefold Totoro's sure kill attack. By opening and closing your body to the limit and concentrating all your strength on one point in your fist, using the fastest speed and the shortest path to throw this punch, at the moment when the punch hits the limit of the distance that the fist can reach, all the strength gathered in the fist will be released in an explosive manner. The real purpose of this attack should be to create a shockwave, not to throw out your full-strength punch. That's why the power is so great. Under the gaze of Kuju Totoro and Yuta Totoro in disbelief, Noah patted his dirty clothes and looked at Kuju Totoro with a smile. Am I right? You dodged it. Kuju Totoro opened his mouth and finally revealed a bitter smile. Not only did you dodge it, but you also saw through the true purpose of my attack. Who are you? The principle behind your attack isn't very difficult. It's just like how people who practice swordsmanship all year round can unleash sword waves and slash through the air when they reach the pinnacle. Similarly, punches can also unleash shock waves. It's just that your attack has strengthened this feature to the limit. Noah lowered his head and looked at his hand. If it's a person who has trained his body and skills to the extreme, saying this, Noah fiercely clenched his fist. Like a longbow that was pulled to the limit, he instantly pulled his clenched fist behind his back. Whing! The power condensed from the fist shook the atmosphere and rolled up a small impact. The small impact turned into solid light spots and gathered on Noah's fist. Originally, at this point, as long as the power was perfectly controlled and the fist was thrown in the shortest path and the fastest speed, the small impact and huge force gathered on the fist would hit the space in front of the fist, causing a bigger impact and forming a real shockwave that spread out. In this way, the sure kill punch of Kuju Totoro would be perfectly reproduced. Unfortunately, Noah could not reproduce the sure kill punch of Kuju Totoro. Bang! In the next moment, the condensed impact on Noah's fist and the condensed power on the fist suddenly lost balance, causing the small impact of the light spots on Noah's fist to dissipate with a muffled sound. Sure enough, even if I know the principle and how to use it, I can't use this move if I don't find the specific way to control the power. Noah frowned and clenched his fist, but his expression soon relaxed. It seems that I still need to practice for a period of time before I can use this move. Noah, who was saying this, did not see that the expression of Kuju Totoro had changed from disbelief to disbelief, and was quickly replaced by complete shock. In order to learn this move, Kuju Totoro had spent almost 2 years before he finally mastered it completely. And now, Noah had only seen it once, and after deducing the principle and method of using it, he had almost succeeded. The only difference was that he had not practiced it and did not know when to control the power to what extent. What a terrifying person. Kuju Totoro took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. He hugged his arms, stood up, looked at Noah, and sighed. This move is quite a burden on the body, especially the arm. Even now that I've become a surpasser, I feel that using it twice is the limit. If you use it a third time, I'm afraid that your body will become immobile. If you want to practice this move, it's best to allocate the number of practice times and practice time. Otherwise, your body will definitely collapse. You have to be careful. Hearing this, Noah was slightly startled, and then laughed. I secretly learned your move, and you're giving me advice. Aren't you too nice? Really, what the hell are you doing? Kuju Totoro, who came to Kuju Totoro's side, also complained. This guy is now an enemy. Can't you give advice after class? Hearing this, Noah was happy again. Didn't that mean that he gave advice without objection? Although their personalities were different, Kuju Totoro and Kuju Totoro were unexpectedly good people. Do you guys still want to fight? Noah, who had a good impression of Kuju Totoro and Kuju Totoro, did not pursue the victory. Instead, he shrugged at them. I think that at this time, the winner has already been decided, and the right choice is to continue running. Otherwise, if your injuries are really serious, you won't be able to complete the task of running 10 laps. You bastard, are you trying to make us surrender? Kuju Totoro roared with a fierce face. I won't let you win that easily. Well, little tiger, I think that Noah is right. Kuju Totoro advised. We still have 10 laps to run. If we continue, not only will we exhaust our energy, but our injuries will also worsen. If that's the case, we won't be able to complete the task. Humph, Kuju Totoro's eyes flickered for a moment, as if he had found a way out, and turned his head away. Noah, who saw the interaction between the two of them, laughed involuntarily. He turned around and waved his hand at the two of them. Well then, I'll go first. Let's fight again next time. Without giving them a chance to speak, Noah ran away, leaving Kuju Totoro and Kuju Totoro staring at each other. Kuju Totoro raised the fist that he had just thrown out, looked at it, and clenched it tightly. I also need to become stronger. Chapter 202. Ha. 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 Amidst the panting, students arrived at the school gate one after another, wearing tattered or dirty gym clothes. After completing the task of running 10 laps around the school, they fell to the ground, unable to get up. Not long after, Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie appeared together. As they ran towards the school gate, they panted heavily. When they reached the finish line, they crouched down and pressed their hands on their knees. Their faces were pale as they panted. 1 lap around the school was about 4 kilometers long. 10 laps would be 40 kilometers. If it wasn't for the strengthening effect of the Daybreak Star rune, with a girl's physical strength, she would have probably fainted long ago. On the other hand, Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie were still able to hold on without collapsing. Compared to the boys around them who had collapsed, they were in a much better state. Just as Orange Bar, Ivanli, and Julie were about to catch their breaths, a can of beverage appeared in front of Ivanli and Julie at the same time and entered their eyes. Thank you for your hard work, Ivanli, Julie. Noah placed the drinks in front of the two girls and opened the bottle. He tried his best to soften his tone as he spoke slowly. Come on, drink them. Noah. Noah. Ivan only had time to confirm who it was before his hand involuntarily reached for the drink in front of him and drank it. Thank you very much. Julie's little face was flushed from the strenuous exercise. While the bell on her head was ringing, she first thanked Noah, then took the drink and drank it sip by sip. Orange, this is yours. After Ivan and Julie finished their drinks, Noah handed another can to Orange Bar. You should drink it too. Thank you. Orange Bar was startled. He didn't expect himself to have one. After he recovered, he smiled gratefully and took the drink. The 3 girls drank their drinks hurriedly. Their gym clothes were soaked in sweat and stuck tightly to their bodies. Each of them had their own merits. Ha! After a while, Ivanli breathed out heavily without caring about his image. I'm finally alive. I thought I was dead for sure. Hey, are you okay? Noah shook his head with a smile. Pull yourself together. There are still 3 years to go. If you're like this on the first day, how are you going to survive the rest? Speaking of this, Noah looked at Julie, who was still slightly out of breath. By the way, how did the 3 of you end up together? If they saw others while running, they could attack them. This was an additional rule for this long-distance race. However, Orange Bar, Ivan, and Julie ran back to the finish line together. Clearly, although they had met each other, they did not fight. This was Ivanli's idea, Julie answered honestly. The 3 of us formed an alliance to deal with others and complete the 10 laps mission. After all, us girls are different from you guys. In terms of pure physical strength, we're definitely weaker. Orange Bar nodded in response to Noah's question. So, in order to avoid wasting unnecessary energy and time, we ran back together when we met Evanley and Julie. Noah was relieved. Even if Evanley had learned the way of the sword and Orange Bar was a master of the 18 arts of Orange Flow, they were still inferior to the boys in terms of pure physical strength. As for Julie, Noah hadn't seen her true strength. But thinking about it, her petite body couldn't have stored much physical strength. Of course, even though that was the case, other than the boys, Juba, Evanley, and Julie were the first girls to reach the finish line and complete 10 laps. Even if the boys were included, the 3 of them were still in the top 10. This was already considered very fast and had good stamina. After this long run, I finally know how powerful the Daybreak Star tattoo is. Evanley said with a complicated expression as she stroked her breasts, or more accurately, her breasts, which were bulging under her gym clothes. We actually managed to run 40 kilometers. It's a bit unbelievable. 40 kilometers was already considered a marathon. For a group of girls who only went to a normal junior high school and didn't specially train their bodies and only practice martial arts, it was really unbelievable that they could complete such a mission. Moreover, not only was there a problem with the height of the road outside the school, but because it was an artificial island facing the sea, the wind was especially strong. Running in such an environment was no different from running on a steep slope with a grade 4 or 5 wind. It was quite tiring. However, the group of students managed to finish running such a route within 2 hours. This was already close to the world record for a marathon, right? It was natural for Evanley to have such thoughts. Right, Noah? Evanley suddenly said to Noah. How many times did you complete the task of 10 laps and reach the finish line? Orange Bar and Julie immediately turned their heads and looked at Noah. Me? Noah scratched his cheek. Well, maybe it's because not many people wanted to fight with me, but I was the first to successfully finish the race. The first one. Orange Bar choked and followed up with a question. Then when did you finish? Noah said with an innocent face. About an hour ago. Orange Bar and Evanley were speechless. Even Julie was stunned for a moment before nodding her head. As expected of Noah, he's really strong. It took Orange Bar, Evanley, and Julie 2 hours to finish the 40 kilometers run. And this was already equivalent to the world record for a marathon. 1 hour. What kind of concept was that? Undoubtedly, it's all stage I. Even if your stamina was originally much stronger than ours, after the enhancement, the gap shouldn't have widened so much, right? Orange Bar could only say this with a speechless expression. Could it be that other than your outstanding martial arts, you also have amazing stamina? My stamina isn't too far off from the average guy. After the enhancement of the Daybreak Star rune, it's not much different from the guys in class. Noah smiled meaningfully. And there's a trick for me to be able to reach this stage. Trick. Orange Bar, Evanley, and Julie's ears twitched at the same time. Evanley couldn't help but ask. What trick? It's the trick to increase stamina and stamina's recovery speed, extending stamina usage time, and indirectly extending stamina training and increasing stamina's duration and extent. Noah said calmly. It's with this trick that the stamina consumption and recovery are basically equal. So, I basically finished the 40 kilometers without any loss. When I came back, I didn't even pant. So powerful. Evanley was startled and quickly asked. Then what's the trick? You want to know? Noah shrugged. Today's long-distance running class is already over, so I'll tell you next time. After saying that, Noah turned his gaze to the running track that they had been running on until an hour ago. From afar, Noah could almost see a few people running in this direction with flushed faces and thick necks. Behind them, there should be quite a few people still working hard. Suddenly, Noah muttered to himself for a while and looked at Orange Bar. "Where's Sui Gao?" "I don't know either." Orange Bar shook his head and also looked in the direction of the running track. "We saw ya on the way here. We wanted to run back with her, but you complained that we were running too slowly and insisted that we run back first. That child has a more delicate personality, so to not let her be a burden to us, we ran first." Noah nodded and agreed with Orange Bar's actions. With Sui Gao's delicate personality, if Orange Bar was really with her and looked after her, it might really make her feel guilty that she was dragging them down. Therefore, Orange Bar's actions were not wrong. In the end, when Sui Gao returned, the sky had already started to darken. The moment she reached the finish line, Sui Gao fainted due to fatigue. That night, it was said that Sui Gao had been hiding in her room and didn't come out for dinner. Then, the next day, in class, 2 students applied to withdraw from school, removed the daybreak star pattern, and returned to their previous world. Chapter 203. In the cold forest, in an open space, Noah stood in the middle, as if he had entered a meditative state, letting the cold wind blow on his body without moving. On the side, Ivan and Julie were also present, as if they were afraid of disturbing Noah. They subconsciously held their breath and quietly stayed there. Ho! The wind mixed with the falling leaves, drifting through the open space that was not large. At this moment, Noah took a deep breath and tightened his body. Raising his hand, clenching his fist, like a longbow, Noah pulled his clenched fist behind him, and the power of every part of his body rushed to that arm and gathered on his fist. Whang! The next moment, the space around the fist shook slightly, and the gorgeous light spots also appeared in the vibrating space. Like bees returning to their nest, they condensed on Noah's fist. In less than a second, the gorgeous light spots that converged on Noah's fist all merged together, turning into a golden vortex, covering Noah's fist. At this time, if someone carefully observed the arm that Noah pulled behind him, they would definitely notice. The muscles on that arm were trembling at a very small frequency. Then, Noah opened his eyes abruptly. Ho! With a cold bellow, Noah's fist seemed to have turned into a shooting star that disappeared in a flash as it swung forward abruptly. Dong! The vortex that converged on Noah's fist suddenly exploded, stirring up a violent airflow, forming a terrifying shockwave, rubbing against the atmosphere, and in the sharp sound of the atmosphere, like a beam of light, violently shot out. The shockwave that turned into a beam of light cut through the space, and heavily fell on a tree in front of him. Bang! The true sound of an explosion resounded. That was the sound of the fragile tree exploding under the impact of the violent shockwave, turning into pieces of wood and broken tree bodies. And in such a situation, the shockwave that directly blasted a large scale of trees into pieces did not reduce in power, and hit trees again and again. Bang! 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 So, in a very rhythmic explosion, the trees and the impact path of the light beam like shockwave were blasted one after another, turning into broken wood and tree bodies, flying everywhere. It was not until a long time later that everything calmed down. No. It can't be said that everything calmed down. Under the bombardment of the shockwave, the trees that turned into broken wood and broken tree bodies fell to the ground in a burst of crackling sounds, and the ground where the shockwave passed also trembled, and the gravel flew everywhere, scattering in all directions. And when everything really calmed down, the people present could only see that in front of Noah, who maintained the posture of punching out, there was a huge gully with a diameter of 2 meters and a length of at least 30 meters standing there. Of course, in the range of this gully, the trees and the ground that should have been there all disappeared. Smoke and dust filled the huge gully. Not far away, Ivan and Julie saw this scene. One of them opened his mouth slightly due to shock, while the other's eyes lit up, and her crimson eyes became extremely lively. Hugh. Noah exhaled, retracted his fist, and looked at the hand that just swung out a terrifying blow, and opened and closed his palm. After feeling the pain on it, he sighed. It seems that even after being improved, this move, Annihilation Blow, still has a burden on the body. Annihilation Blow. That was the name that Noah gave to the sure kill punch that he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. Of course, it was different from the move he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. In order to minimize the burden on the body, or even completely eliminate it, Noah slightly improved the sure kill punch that he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. Then, the result of the improvement was the move that Noah named Annihilation Blow. However, although it was said to be an improvement, Noah only added a few things to the move that he comprehended from the 9-layer penetrations. In the process of punching out, he controlled the muscles of the arm that punched out, and made the muscles of the arm vibrate. Noah added this step to make this move called Annihilation Blow take shape. The reason why the sure kill punch of the 9-layer penetrations had such a large burden on the body was mainly because the power of this move was too great, and the reaction force of the punch would also act on the user's body, making the user's body bear the burden. And if Noah added this step, in the process of punching out, the huge reaction force would be removed little by little along with the vibration of the arm muscles. In the end, the reaction force acting on the user's body would be reduced by a lot. In this way, when the user punched out, he would be able to use his full strength without restraint, and a part of the reaction force that was removed would also rebound, increasing the power of the Annihilation Blow. Therefore, Noah's Annihilation Blow not only could be used more than the unimproved version of the 9-layer penetrations, but its power was also much greater. According to the 9-layer penetrations, his move could only be used twice, and after 3 times, his body would be completely immobilized. Noah's Annihilation Blow could be used at least 4 times, and after 5 times would be the limit. If he wanted to completely immobilize his body, he would have to use it 7 times. At least, when Noah's body was still at rank I of an ordinary surpasser, it was like this. Seeing Noah retract his fist, Ivan and Julie hurriedly approached him. "This is the move you said a few days ago that you stole from others." Ivan looked at the huge gully, and couldn't help but be speechless. If hit, even a surpasser would be near death, or even instant death, right? Julie pulled Noah's clothes, raised her head, and stared at Noah without blinking. "This move, can you teach me? Julie also wants to learn." Noah paused, and then apologetically patted Julie's head. "Sorry, although Annihilation Blow was improved by me, it still puts a lot of burden on the body. It's not a good choice to let a girl with a weaker body learn it. Also, Julie is quite petite. I'm afraid that even if you learn it, not only will you not be able to use it successfully, but you will also hurt yourself." Julie's bright eyes suddenly dimmed a bit, and she said with a bit of dejection, "That's a pity. I'm really glad that I didn't become Noah's opponent in the qualification ceremony." Ivan stuck out his tongue. "Okay, it's almost time for class, let's go back." Noah and Julie nodded at the same time. As soon as they entered the classroom, Noah, Ivan, and Julie felt that today's atmosphere was a bit heavier than usual. Noah, Ivan, and Julie understood why the atmosphere became like this, and the 3 of them were silent. Since the start of school, almost 3 days had passed. In these 3 days, basically every day, there would be a group of students who couldn't bear the heavy training and applied to leave the school. In addition, the people who stayed were squeezed out of their energy and stamina due to the heavy training, so it was inevitable that such a heavy atmosphere would appear. From afar, Noah could even see that Sui Gaoya, who fainted during the long-distance running training 3 days ago, was sitting in her seat with her head down, her face full of gloominess and disappointment, making Orange Bar, who was sitting next to her, abnormally worried. In these few days, Sui Gaoya had maintained such a worrisome state. Obviously, these days of training also made this weak girl feel abnormally pressured. Seeing Swagale like this, Ivan, who was sitting next to Noah, couldn't help but worry. Yeah, there shouldn't be a problem, right? In this regard, Noah could only remain silent. He picked up a list of names that teacher Little Bunny had just sent to him with her overly energetic voice. It was a list of the students who were still in the class. On the list, not only was there a photo of every student in the class, their name, and other basic information, there was also a detailed record of their combat strength. For example, whether they had any experience in martial arts or sports, and information related to Blaze were all recorded on it. It was a list for the students to use as a reference when choosing Tripping Double Blade. Chapter 204. Ivanli, who was also looking at the list, put his head in front of Noah's list and looked at the list with Noah, as if he could see who Noah wanted to choose as the Tripping Double Blade. Right, who are you planning to form the official Tripping Double Blade with? For Ivanli's question, Noah shrugged and didn't answer. In fact, Noah didn't want to form the official Tripping Double Blade at all. He didn't even think about choosing a Tripping Double Blade before the weekend. The reason was very simple, because he didn't know many people. He didn't know if it was because of Noah's extraordinary strength that his classmates had a sense of distance or rejection towards Noah. In the 3 days he stayed in the school, almost no boys talked to Noah. The reason why he used the word almost was because 3 days ago during the long-distance running training, Noah, Kyujituryu, and Kawai Hokusaki had a few words during the battle. After the battle, they would only talk for a short while if there was a chance. According to Noah's knowledge, Kyujituryu and Kawai Hokusaki had decided to form the official Tripping Double Blade. In this way, Noah naturally wouldn't have a satisfactory candidate for the Tripping Double Blade. Therefore, Noah also had a somewhat casual and peaceful attitude. Anyway, until the weekend, the students who hadn't formed the Tripping Double Blade would form the Tripping Double Blade under the school's arrangement. Therefore, Noah didn't need to worry about anything, just let nature take its course. Holding this thought, Noah just glanced at the information of his acquaintances on the list, such as Ivanli, Julie, Tachaba, and Swaigaya, then threw the list on the table and didn't care about it anymore. Where are Ivan and Julie? Noah placed his hands behind his head and casually asked his two companions on his left and right. You should have decided who to form the Tripping Double Blade with, right? Of course I will form the Tripping Double Blade with Julie. Ivanli said arrogantly. After all, we have lived together for 3 days, I feel that Julie and I get along very well. Ah, Julie nodded her small head gently and said expressionlessly. I like Ivanli, so no problem. I also like Julie. Ivanli responded with a smile. If it wasn't for Noah in the middle, maybe he would have hugged Julie. Hearing the conversation between Ivanli and Julie, Noah also secretly felt relieved. To be honest, the pressure of living in the same room with two girls who were charming in all aspects was not an ordinary kind of pressure. Not to mention that when he first moved in, he accidentally saw Ivanli and Julie's naked bodies. During this period of time, Ivanli and Julie's various private matters were constantly displayed in front of Noah, which made Noah very vexed. For example, Julie liked to wear a white shirt as her pajamas. Every night, she would raise her 2 white thighs in front of Noah. Even if Ivanli tried to stop it, Julie would still ignore it. For Julie, in terms of the matters between men and women, although it wasn't that she didn't know, but basically, as long as he didn't touch or see her naked body, she wouldn't put up any defenses. Ivanli did pay attention to the fact that Noah was in his room, but some things couldn't be avoided. For example, when taking out a change of clothes or drying clothes, it was inevitable that Ivanli's secret clothes would be unintentionally seen by Noah. As a result, Ivanli couldn't hide the style and color of his underwear from Noah, which almost made Ivanli cry. In this kind of life, as a man, he could only endure bitterly, or he could only transform into a wolf. The former would make people mentally tired, to the point that they couldn't live a normal life. Needless to say, the latter would definitely be treated as scum the next day, and would directly be destroyed by society. Noah didn't want to be the latter. Therefore, Noah could only bear the pain of being the former. After the weekend, Ivanli and Julie officially formed a tripping double edge, and Noah could finally live a normal life. How could he not be relieved? At this moment, Ivanli narrowed his eyes and said such a sentence that made Noah jump. "Do you feel happy that you don't have to live with us?" This sentence made Noah's heart skip a beat. Whoa! Ivanli seemed to be able to see through Noah's inner thoughts, crying out in pain. "Although it's not that I can't understand your thoughts, but no matter what, I'm still a girl. Your reaction makes me feel hurt." On the side, Julie turned her head and stared straight at Noah, like an abandoned little animal. Undoubtedly, her face was expressionless, but it gave people a delicate feeling. "Noah doesn't want to live with me and Ivanli." Hearing this, Noah bitterly smiled. "Does Julie really want me to live with you?" What made Noah and Ivanli surprised was that Julie actually nodded without hesitation. "Living with Noah, it feels good." "Feels good." Noah and Ivanli were stunned at the same time. "Ah," Julie said in an extremely flat tone. "Because Noah and Ivanli are very gentle, just like Mom and Dad." "Dad?" Noah covered his face and sighed. "Mom." Ivanli's face was also full of confusion. Really, when staying with Julie, Noah and Ivanli were just like Julie's mom and dad. They couldn't help but take care of her. At this time, Teacher Little Rabbit, who had been jumping around in the class, clapped her hands, her unique sweet voice resounding throughout the classroom. Okay. Everyone can think about the tripping double edge matter in your spare time. Our physical strength enhancement class is about to start again. Everyone gather at the school gate. Let's go. After that, Teacher Little Rabbit took the lead and rushed out of the classroom. A group of students sighed and followed her out. Their whole body was filled with a decadent atmosphere. Noah noticed before he got up. Sui Gaoya, who had been lowering her head, with a depressed expression, for a moment, her face showed an expression that looked like she was about to cry. At the school gate, the students who had changed into their gymnastics clothes once again slowly gathered. Many of the students were whispering to each other, making a conversation that could not be ignored. Is this life going to continue for another 3 years? How are we going to persevere? I'm probably at my limit. Someone will apply to drop out today, right? Ivanli, who was standing beside Noah, heard this conversation, and felt a little uncomfortable. It wasn't easy to become classmates, but in the end, everyone is planning to leave. I feel so lonely. Julie was still expressionless, but the ahog on her head drooped listlessly, showing the depression in her heart. Shortly after, another round of conversations that couldn't be ignored sounded. Suegaya probably can't go on anymore, right? When this sentence was said, many people's eyes gathered on Suegaya. Suegaya's body trembled, she lowered her head forcefully, almost burying it in her abnormally well-endowed breasts. Many people could clearly see Suegaya's body trembling. What nonsense are you talking about? Orange Bar angrily shouted at the surrounding students. You will definitely be able to persevere. The surrounding students more or less looked at each other and chose to remain silent. It was obvious that most of them didn't believe Orange Bar's words. Seeing this, Noah narrowed his eyes, looked at Suegaya who was biting her lips and lowering her head, and secretly sighed in his heart. Although he didn't speak to Suegaya normally, because Orange Bar often looked for Noah to discuss martial arts and life problems, Suegaya, who had always been by Orange Bar's side, would often appear around Noah. Therefore, Noah decided to help Suegaya. Suegaya. Noah, who wasn't far from Suegaya, said directly. Later, you'll run however I tell you to. Do you understand? Suigaya looked up with a stunned expression, even Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and the surrounding students showed a surprised expression. Suigaya, who reacted, was at a loss. That, if you don't know what to say, then don't say anything. Noah gave Suigaya a smile. Don't worry, I won't harm you. Suigaya could only stare blankly at Noah, and after a while, she nodded uneasily. Chapter 205. Bang! As the sound of the colored firecrackers rang out, Teacher Little Rabbit was like a running rabbit. As she jumped, she took the finished firecrackers and dodged to the side. Some of the surrounding students chose to dash out and run at the front. Some chose to stay in place and stare in one direction. There, with Noah as the center, Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and Suigaya were gathered around him. It was a scene that made the boys envious. What are you guys doing? Noah was speechless. I told Suigaya to run with me. What are you guys doing here? Yeah, is my tripping double blade. Orange Bar immediately responded. Although I don't know what you want to do to ya, I have to watch you. Are you treating me like an idiot who wants to attack a girl? Noah's mouth twitched. He then looked at Ivanli and Julie. Then, what about you two? I'm also curious about what you want to do to ya. Ivanli answered crisply. So, it's fine if I follow, right? Yeah, Julie nodded. She shook the bell on her hairband and made a ding-ling sound. She looked unusually cute. Suigaya nervously placed her hands in front of her body, but because her arms were too slender, and the pair of bulges in front of her chest were too large, her arms were directly buried in a certain cleavage, causing the eyes of the surrounding male students to almost pop out of their sockets. Noah, classmate, what do you want to do to me? You also think I will do something to you? Noah sighed faintly. I'm not a dog. I won't bite you. Suigaya's face was still a little uneasy. She said something that almost made Noah fall. You really won't bite me? I promise. I definitely won't bite you. Feeling all the strength in his body disappearing, Noah decided to end this quickly. Suigaya, you will run with me. Then, follow my instructions and breathe. Breathing. Unsurprisingly, everyone present was startled by this. However, Noah did not even bother to explain himself. Instead, he directly spoke. All right. Let's go. After saying that, Noah took the lead and started running. Ivanli, Julie, Orange Bar, and Suigaya all reacted and quickly ran after him. Noah deliberately slowed down his pace and ran beside Suigaya. He deliberately didn't look at Suigaya's bouncing breasts because of the vigorous running. Suigaya, take a deep breath and hold it in. Oh. Suigaya replied in a fluster. Just like that, Noah whispered to Suigaya as he ran forward. He asked Suigaya to follow his instructions. While running, Suigaya began to breathe awkwardly. Around them, Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar were like bodyguards, running beside Noah and Suigaya. They listened to Noah's incomprehensible words as they ran forward. Not long after, the group of 5 disappeared from the running track in front of the school gate. No one noticed that the sweet and cute expression on the face of Teacher Bunny, who was wearing a maid outfit and a pair of bunny ears, slowly disappeared, and was replaced by a sinister smile with some profound meaning. 2 hours later, ha. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar stood side by side at the school gate, their chests rising and falling as they panted heavily. However, their gazes were fixed in front of them, their eyes filled with disbelief. Within the range of the 3 girls' vision, Suigaya was also panting, but her breathing was much less than Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar's. Compared to the previous time when she fainted immediately after running, she stood there steadily this time. Moreover, it was obvious that she still had a lot of energy left. This caused Sui Gaoya's eyes to fluctuate violently. She looked at her hands with a face of disbelief. Why? Why? This was also the question in Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar's minds. Undoubtedly, Sui Gaoya was not good at sports. She had run until the sky turned dark during the previous training and even fainted. However, this time, her condition was much better than Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar's. She was even in the first batch to reach the finish line and complete the mission. Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar were not the only ones who were in disbelief. Even Sui Gaoya herself could not believe that she had done this. She stared at her hands in a daze, unable to recover for a long time. Thank you for your hard work. Noah appeared in front of the four girls at the scene, looking exactly the same as when he set off. He didn't look like he had just finished a 40-kilometer run at all. He opened the bottles of drinks and handed them to the four girls. Drink this first. Thank you. The four girls subconsciously thanked him with stunned expressions. They only came to their senses after receiving the drinks. What? What the hell is going on? Ivanli was the first to cry out. He approached Noah and stared at Noah closely. Noah! You did this, didn't you? What do you mean by I did this? Noah said in dissatisfaction. You're saying it like I did something bad. I was helping Sui Gaoya. That's true. Although he said that, Ivan still had a look of disbelief on his face. Noah! Noah! Sui Gaoya clenched her hands tightly in front of her. Although she was fidgeting with her hands nervously, her eyes did not avoid Noah. The gloominess and haze on her face had long disappeared. It was replaced by an anxious expression as if she had regained hope. Why? Why did I? That's the credit of the breathing technique that I just taught you. Seeing Sui Gaoya's anxious expression as if she had regained hope, Noah smiled and turned to look at Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar. Do you still remember the trick I told you about last time? This breathing technique is the trick. Saying that, Noah did not deliberately keep them in suspense and explained. In people's lives, there are actually many examples of using breathing to achieve a certain effect. For example, deep breathing can relieve tension and panic. Pregnant women can also use breathing to achieve the goal of assisting in childbirth. These have some psychological effects, but there is also a practical effect of breathing. In this world, there are some countries where martial arts require the use of breathing. Not only can it achieve twice the results with half the effort, but it can also help in adjusting one's state of mind and body during battle to achieve the goal of prolonging the battle. This kind of specific breathing to achieve a certain goal and help in practicing martial arts and fighting is called breathing, training qi, or spirit cultivation, in China and India. Noah slowly explained. And according to these breathing methods, I have also figured out a breathing technique that can help people quickly recover their strength and increase their endurance. Hearing this, Ivanli, Julie, and Orange Bar gradually showed expressions of relief. Sui Gaoya also looked at Noah with admiration. So it's because I learned Noah classmates' breathing technique that I can keep up with everyone. You're still far from learning it. Noah looked at Sui Gaoya with a smile that was not a smile. If your breathing was completely in accordance with the breathing technique, with that kind of speed, the recovery and consumption of physical strength should be just right. The result would be that even if you reached the finish line, you should be in a complete state. But you were panting, which proves that your breathing is not completely in accordance with the breathing technique. That. Sui Gaoya immediately bowed in panic. Really? I'm really sorry. Why are you suddenly apologizing? Noah laughed in spite of himself and scratched his cheek. Remember the breathing technique I just taught you. In the future, no matter what kind of training you participate in, remember to use it. This way, you can keep up with everyone. Swagea vigorously nodded her small head. Her face and eyes were filled with extreme joy and moved, almost shedding tears. Relying on this breathing technique, Swagea could endure all the training and continue to stay in the school. This made Ivanley and Orange Bar somewhat happy as they surrounded Swagea. Julie's expression also showed a rare sign of relaxation. As for Swagea herself, she kept looking at the calm and smiling Noah, her eyes constantly flashing. Chapter 206. Night quietly fell. At this time, in the dormitory's lounge, many students had gathered here. They gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, chatting about everything under the sun, or sitting there excitedly watching TV. It was quite lively. And on a sofa, Noah sat here, holding a book in his hand, somewhat leisurely reading. After the last accident, Ivanley strictly asked Noah to temporarily leave the room when the two opposite-sex roommates were bathing, and find something to do outside. In this way, even if there was an accident, Noah would not be able to take advantage of it. Therefore, every time when Ivanley and Julie were bathing, Noah would come to the lounge and choose to leisurely pass the time. If it was before, Noah would definitely use this time effectively, and use all the leisure time to improve his strength, living the life of an ascetic. However, Noah now had the ability to limit. He could allow the restricted power to enter a state of spontaneous growth. Moreover, the extent of the increase was no less than the extent of the increase when Noah was training himself. In this way, Noah does not have to deliberately train himself, and let the strength increase by itself. Of course, the improvement of strength is one thing. Noah has always insisted that both strength and skills must be improved to achieve a true strength. Therefore, even if the strength enters a state of automatic growth, Noah should also practice martial arts and skills. However, in this regard, Noah is still a person who insists on the balance between work and rest to improve more efficiently. In this school, there are plenty of opportunities to train during the day. Therefore, Noah chose to spend the night leisurely, and let his body enter a state of full rest, to achieve the true balance between work and rest. Those who know that Noah has extraordinary strength may think that Noah reached this level through extremely hard training. But they may not have thought that being able to reasonably arrange what kind of training to do at what time, and what kind of things to do at what time, is the real reason why Noah's strength increased so fast and so strong. Not long after, more and more people in the lounge, and more people noticed Noah. Now, in the whole school, there is almost no one who does not know Noah. Even the seniors know that a super powerful person has appeared among the freshmen. All of a sudden, many discussions and conversations about Noah began to take place. Not knowing how much time has passed, a girl appeared in the lounge, and noticed the commotion in the lounge, and also saw Noah. Her eyes lit up, and she walked in the direction of Noah. "Can I disturb you for a moment?" As the voice sounded, a young girl with long black hair appeared in front of Noah. Noah raised his head and looked into the eyes of the person who had come. Noah, who saw the person's full appearance, smiled slightly. "Oh, it's Orange. Are you here to rest too? I originally wanted to play chess, but when I saw you here, I came over." Orange Bar closed his eyes and bowed solemnly to Noah. "I'm here to thank you, Noah. Thank you for helping ya." Noah, who did not expect Orange Bar to suddenly do this, was momentarily at a loss. After a while, he hurriedly shook his head. "That's nothing. You don't have to thank me so solemnly. No, that's very important to both me and ya." Orange Bar said this methodically, then lowered his head. If it weren't for your help, you wouldn't have smiled again. At this point, Orange Bar seemed to be a little guilty. For the past few days, Ya has been very listless because she can't keep up with everyone in training. Although I'm very worried, I'm not a meticulous girl. I want to comfort Ya and help her, but I don't know what to do. Undoubtedly, Ya is my roommate and also my tripping double-edged sword, but I can't help her with anything. Speaking of which, I'm really ashamed. After saying this, Orange Bar pulled himself together slightly. If this continues, you might not be able to hold on. So, if it weren't for your help, you might have chosen to leave the academy. Please allow me to express my gratitude to you. With that, Orange Bar bowed again. Noah, who had no time to stop her, felt a little helpless. I understand what you mean, but to me, such a small matter is really not worth such a big bow. Orange, I understand your intentions. Please raise your head. Only then did Orange Bar relax her expression and smile at Noah. No matter what, I have to express my gratitude to you. If there's anything you need my help with in the future, please don't hesitate to look for me. I understand. Looking at Tachibana's face that was full of heroic spirit, Noah knew that this young lady, who was born in a family that practiced martial arts, was very serious when she said this. After muttering to himself for a while, he nodded. If there's anything I need you for, I definitely won't hesitate to ask you. That's good. Orange Bar let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Then I won't disturb you. Okay. Noah shrugged. Good night. Good night. Orange Bar's face had an expression as if she had a load off her mind. She left with light footsteps. Looking at Orange Bar's gradually disappearing figure, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A little old-fashioned, but not annoying. After making such an evaluation, Noah lowered his head and continued reading. However, after a while, a slightly nervous and flustered voice sounded in front of Noah. Hearing the voice, Noah once again raised his head. But the first thing that entered Noah's eyes was a pair of exceptionally shocking full breasts that were covered by a thin piece of clothing. The extremely shocking scene suddenly entered Noah's eyes, causing his heart to tremble. His hand trembled, and the book that was lying in his hand a second ago lost its balance and fell down. Noah frantically waved his arms and caught it several times before he finally caught it. "Aw!" At the same time, a small cry of surprise also entered Noah's ears. The owner seemed to be shocked by Noah. Student. Noah. Are you okay? It was Sui Gaoya. Is it Sui Gaoya? Noah slightly raised his voice, and when he saw the strange gazes around him, he realized that he had lost his composure. Less than a meter in front of Noah, the pair of full breasts that stood parallel to him and highlighted his presence caused Noah to abruptly raise his head. When he saw Sui Gaoya's somewhat uneasy pretty face, he awkwardly smiled. I'm sorry, I scared you. It's okay, I should be the one who scared you. Sui Gaoya thought that Noah acted like that just now because he was frightened by her sudden voice, so she apologized repeatedly. I just wanted to thank you. Thank me. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just now, Orange Bar came to thank me on your behalf, and now you're thanking me on your own. As expected of the tripping double blade, you have quite a tacit understanding. Little Ba. Sui Gaoya was surprised at first, then lowered her head in embarrassment. Although I'm very grateful to Little Ba, that's my own business, so I have to thank you. If you really want to thank me, then you have to work hard to not be brushed away. Noah tilted his head and smiled. After all, it wasn't easy for us to get to know each other. If even you leave the school, then Ivan and Julie will be sad. Is that so? Sui Gaoya secretly glanced at Noah, and her face turned red. Then. Noah classmate. What about you? Me? Noah was startled, and then smiled. I'm the same. Looking at the smile on Noah's face, Suegaya's face turned even redder, making her a little restless. After a while, she hurriedly said. In short, thank you very much. I'll go back first. Leaving this sentence, Suegaya left as if she was escaping. Noah speechlessly looked at Suegaya's back as she hurriedly ran away. He didn't know what to say. She came so suddenly, and she left so suddenly. This girl, is she deliberately scaring me? Chapter 207. Cheers! In the room, at the small round table, Noah, Ivanli, and Julie raised the cups in their hands and clinked them together with a ding sound. Looking closely, on the small round table, snacks of various sizes were piled up into a small hill. At first glance, it gave people the feeling that the three were looking for entertainment. But in fact, this was a small farewell party held by Noah, Ivanli, and Julie. Tomorrow is finally the weekend. Ivanli raised the cup that was filled with drinks and moved his head closer to Noah, letting a pair of beautiful big eyes into Noah's field of vision. There was a teasing look in his eyes. Tomorrow, Julie and I will apply to form an official, tripping double blade, and the dormitory will also be redistributed. Noah, can you tell me how you feel now that you don't have two cute roommates? Do you want to know how I feel now? Looking at the teasing Ivanli who turned into an interviewer, Noah's expression became quite annoyed. I just feel that it's great that I don't have to see a certain cute roommate's underwear thrown around in the bathroom. I didn't throw it around. The teasing on Ivanli's face was suddenly replaced by embarrassment, and he shouted angrily. I just didn't have time to clean it up. Really? Noah looked indifferent. I hope so. Otherwise, it will be too hard for Julie who has to sleep in the same room with you for the next 3 years. Beside him, Julie made a concise and comprehensive sound. I also hope that Ivanli can pay more attention. I hope that Julie can pay more attention to yourself. Ivanli looked down and glanced at Julie's petite body. To be precise, it should be said that he looked at Julie's appearance with a troubled look. How many times have I said it? Noah is here now. Julie, can't you change your appearance? Noah couldn't help but glance at Julie and sigh helplessly. Julie purposely came all the way from her hometown, Gilliam, to this country to study at Haolang Academy. Noah also heard that Gilliam's place was usually very cold, and snow was a common occurrence. Because of this, Julie, who was used to the cold environment, came to this country with a relatively warm climate. A lot of the weather that was considered a bit cool for others would make Julie feel very hot. Therefore, after Julie came to this school, every time she returned to the dormitory, she would take off all her clothes, wearing only a shirt, and wander around the room. And this was one of the reasons why Noah's unusually sad male annoyance. As for Julie herself, she always felt that her behavior was natural. Therefore, she didn't know how many times Ivanli's words, as usual, she tilted her head, with a clear ding, ding 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 ding, ding. Can't. Julie was originally an extremely cute girl, as beautiful as a doll. Undoubtedly, Julie's expression was expressionless, but her body exuded a delicate and pitiful aura, unsurprisingly, made Ivanli sink. Oh. Ivanli's pretty face blushed, and she turned her head away. Anyway, it's the last night, forget it. Yeah, the ahog on Julie's head shook like a small animal's tail, showing its owner's happy mood. Noah, who had been watching from the side, could only speechlessly pick up the glass of drink, put it to his mouth, and drank. However, in the next moment, Julie's words made Noah spit out the drink in his mouth. Can't I stay with Noah tomorrow? Julie, who usually had no expression on her face, suddenly showed an obvious regretful expression, and then said such a sentence. "Then, tonight, can I sleep with Noah?" PFFF. Noah, who was drinking his drink, felt like his chest was heavily punched, and the drink that just slid down his throat suddenly sprayed out, and sprayed toward Ivanley opposite him. Originally, with Ivanley's skill, it was very easy for him to dodge the incoming fountain of human bodies. It was a pity that Ivanley, who did not drink the drink, did not spit it out like Noah did. Instead, he stood rooted to the ground, his entire face drenched by the drink. The air in the room froze for a moment, and then suddenly exploded. "Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Ivanley." It was rare for Noah to be so flustered. He picked up Ivanley's handkerchief from the table and wiped Ivanley's face. He didn't know if it was Ivanley's or Julie's handkerchief. Ivanley, on the other hand, stood there dumbfounded, as if he was completely confused, and his face was messy as he smiled at Julie. "Julie-chan, can you please repeat what you just said?" Julie tilted her head in confusion. "I want to sleep with Noah tonight, is there a problem?" If it was a normal situation, Ivanley would definitely say, "Big problem," again, to the extent that the whole dormitory could hear it. However, Ivanley, who already had a preliminary understanding of Julie, knew that his common sense couldn't be used on Julie, even if it was useful. At that moment, Ivanley could only take a deep breath, force himself to calm down, and said earnestly, "Julie-chan, about sleeping with Noah, don't you have any thoughts?" Noah also wanted to say something to Julie, but based on past experience, if he spoke up, it might make things more difficult to deal with, so he simply didn't say anything, and let Ivanley handle it. Under the silent gaze of Noah and Ivanley, Julie lowered her eyes slightly. "When I'm at home, I always sleep with my mother. So, although it's embarrassing to say it, in fact, if I sleep alone, I will feel very lonely." Is that so?" Ivanley quickly said. But Julie-chan, don't you still have me to sleep with you?" The clear color in Julie's pair of deep red eyes swayed. "Sleeping with Ivanley reminds me of my mother, and sleeping with Noah reminds me of my father." With that said, Julie's beautiful eyes revealed a kind of nostalgia that made Noah and Ivanley speechless. When talking about her mother, Julie's eyes only had the kind of warmth that only a close family member would have. Whenever she talked about her father, Julie would often express an unusual feeling of reminiscence. Noah, who had been a little concerned about this, hesitated for a moment, and finally, chose to ask, "What about your father?" Julie lowered her head. "He passed away a few years ago." This time, Ivanley, who wanted to stop Julie, completely chose to remain silent. And Noah, who already had some guesses and was mentally prepared, pondered for a moment, raised his hand, and touched Julie's head. It seemed that Julie found a little bit of her father's shadow in Noah, so she subconsciously had feelings of nostalgia for Noah. This made Noah slightly change his mind. Noah touched Julie's head while scratching his cheek. "If Julie doesn't mind, then tonight, let me sleep with you." Julie paused for a moment and then, her usually expressionless face revealed a very shallow smile. Ivanley, who finally reacted, was stunned for a moment, and after a while, he let out a cry of surprise. "Hey hey 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 hey." The soft silvery moonlight shone into the dark room, providing a faint light to the room that had already been turned off. At this moment, 3 people were squeezed together in the lower bunk of the 2-bunk bed. Hugh. Julie tightly clutched Noah's clothes, snuggled in Noah's arms, and fell asleep. Noah could only try his best not to notice the soft and delicate body in his arms, and the fragrance coming from her body, with a bitter face. And in the innermost part of the bed, Ivanley, who was sleeping on the other side of Julie, stared at Noah, as if he was guarding against theft, making Noah feel uncomfortable all over. "Why do you have to squeeze in here?" Noah's exasperated voice only caused Avonlea to put on a fake smile. "Do you think I'll just watch the two of you sleep together and do nothing?" Noah looked up at the bedboard, unable to speak for a long time. Chapter 208. Everyone. Good morning. In an extremely excited state, Teacher Little Rabbit, who was standing on the podium, made a cute pose. "Finally, everyone has an official, tripping double blade. This is really worthy of celebration. Have your seats and dormitory been adjusted?" With that said, Teacher Little Rabbit's gaze went straight to the last row in the innermost part of the classroom. Looking at the lonely teenager sitting there, she revealed a sweet and evil smile. Oh, it seems that there are people who don't have their own, tripping double blade. In the classroom, all the students followed Teacher Little Rabbit's gaze and looked at the lonely teenager sitting in a seat. Bearing the gaze from all directions, Noah, who was sitting there alone, used his hand to support his chin, turned his head, and looked out the window. Yes. In the end, Noah did not officially become a tripping double blade with others. Because no one can become Noah's tripping double blade. Just yesterday, Ivan and Julie became a tripping double blade. They moved out of Noah's room and were arranged to another room. It was said that Tachibana and Suegaoya formed a tripping double blade relationship. Ninefold Toru and Kue Hokusaki also formed a tripping double blade relationship. All the first-year students in the class became a tripping double blade with the person they liked. Whether it was the dormitory room or the class seats, they were all adjusted so that every student and their tripping double blade sat together and lived together. Originally, Noah thought that the school would arrange a tripping double blade for him, who did not choose a tripping double blade. Who would have thought that in the end, all the first-year students had formed a tripping double blade relationship with each other. In other words, the only person who did not have a tripping double blade was Noah. After a week of survival of the fittest, in this class, there were a total of 41 freshmen who did not apply to drop out and stayed in the school. In groups of 2, there were a total of 20 groups of tripping double blade in the class, but one person was left behind and could not form a team. This person was Noah. Even Noah did not expect that things would turn out like this. However, compared to being suddenly assigned a desk mate and roommate that he was unfamiliar with, this result made Noah feel much more relaxed. At the very least, Noah was alone in terms of his dormitory and seat. He could fully enjoy his personal space without worrying too much. Ivan and Julie sat in front of Noah. Alone. Ivan looked at the nonchalant Noah with the rest of the students and seemed a little worried. "Teacher, is it okay even without the tripping double blades? Even if you say that, I, Teacher Little Rabbit, have no way of suddenly finding someone to form a tripping double blade with this reclusive exception." Teacher Little Rabbit pretended to helplessly spread out her hands, but there was a smile on her face. "However, we will have even more intense training in the future. When that time comes, there will definitely be people who can't take it and apply to drop out. When that time comes, there will be people who will form a team with the exception." Hearing this, the hearts of everyone in the classroom became heavy. Then, since the official, tripping double blade, has been decided, we should also begin training on the blaze. Teacher Little Rabbit did not seem to notice the abnormal atmosphere and continued to speak in high spirits. "I'm here to inform everyone that next week, we will be conducting a mock battle where the blaze is allowed, new blade battle." The sudden news made many people involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. Of course, it was caused by surprise and confusion. "No way." Ivan, who was sitting in front of Noah, said in a shocked voice. "They're going to fight right from the start." Even Noah frowned, feeling helpless against this violent school. It was a weapon that was materialized from his soul, Blaze. Although it was a weapon with a simple structure under normal circumstances, since it was a weapon, it meant that it had the power to kill. The blaze formed by the soul could only be used against the soul. This was what the chairman of Heartwarming Academy said. However, a weapon was still a weapon. If one casually used it when it wasn't necessary, the impact would be relatively greater. Furthermore, Blaze was a materialization of one's soul. There were still many secrets to it, so it wasn't appropriate to casually use it. Therefore, the Academy clearly stated that without permission, students were not allowed to casually use the Blaze, otherwise they would be severely punished. However, Heartwarming Academy was an organization that cultivated combat skills and surpassers, so it was impossible for them not to target the surpasser's greatest weapon, even if they were to use the Blaze for training. The students present were already prepared to use the Blaze at any time. However, they did not expect that they would directly use the Blaze in a mock battle. Now, I will begin to explain the rules of the new blade battle. Everyone, perk up your ears. It's so nice. Teacher Little Rabbit put her hands on her head and made a rabbit's ear gesture. First, the schedule. It will be on Saturday next week, the day before Golden Week. The start time will be at 5 p.m., and the end time will be at 7 p.m. There will be a total of 2 hours, and the starting signal will be the sound of the clock tower. The location will be in the area north of the Academy. Then, the opponent for the battle is. Teacher Little Rabbit's face showed an extremely joyful smile, and she raised a finger and said this sentence very happily. Except for your tripping dual blades, everyone else is an enemy. Below, Noah's eyebrows suddenly raised. Wait. Teacher. Ivanley immediately raised his hand and stood up. If that's the case, won't Noah be at a disadvantage without the tripping dual blades? Pulling, little sister Ponytail, are you serious? Teacher Little Rabbit's eyes were already curved into the shape of a crescent moon. During the entrance ceremony, with the strength of a normal person, he beat up a rank 3, who had received several years of physical and mental training and battle technique training. Or a pair of tripping dual blades who had just started training for a week. Who is more at a disadvantage? Ivanley's breath stopped. Not to mention Ivanley, even the rest of the students in the class looked at each other in dismay. They all had a bitter expression on their faces. After hearing Teacher Little Rabbit's words, the crowd of students realized that even without the tripping dual blades, Noah was still an unbeatable existence. Not to mention his amazing martial arts skills and experience, even Noah's Blaze, who was known as the exception, was a very thorny problem. After all, even if he was a surpasser, if he was only at the rank 5 level, he could only be considered a superhuman and not a real inhuman. At the very least, if one wanted to clearly see a bullet that was faster than the speed of sound, it was absolutely impossible to reach the rank 3 level. And in this kind of situation, in a contest between hot weapons and cold weapons, which side had the advantage, there was no need to ask, a normal person would know. Everyone knows that the Daybreak Star rune has ranks. Every year students will participate in the Ascension ceremony at the end of the semester. Those who have received sufficient physical and mental training will be able to successfully advance. Looking at the silent crowd of students, Teacher Little Rabbit said as if to encourage them. But for the tripping dual blades who have achieved excellent results in the new blade battle, as a special reward, the school will give them a chance to advance. This sentence made the hearts of all the students become lively. Noah, who originally lacked interest in this so-called new blade battle, also had a light in his eyes as he straightened his back. If there was anything else that could arouse Noah's interest in staying in the school, other than feeling that he could get a clue about the world fragment, then it would be the Daybreak Star rune's ascension. Because that was the opportunity to let Noah's spirit and magic power be sufficiently improved. Although everyone would have such an opportunity at the end of the semester, whether or not they could successfully advance, the more opportunities to improve their strength, the better. Everyone thought so. Noah was naturally no exception. And Teacher Little Rabbit, who clearly saw Noah's performance, revealed a smile. Only, that smile was a bit sinister. Chapter 209. Most of today's classes were normal classes, and the training classes were in the afternoon. After class, as soon as the Chinese teacher walked out of the classroom, Evanly impatiently turned around and slumped on the table in front of Noah with a melancholy expression. Undoubtedly, we've just decided on the tripping double blade, and now we're going to have a blaze mock battle. This school is really tormenting people. Is that so? Noah shook his head and said. I feel that more actual combat would be more effective in increasing our strength. Before Evanly could reply, a stern voice sounded. That's right. Following this voice, Noah, Evanly, and Julie were surrounded by Tachibana and Sui Gaoya. I think that the school also feels that actual combat would be more effective in increasing the strength of the students, right? Tachibana agreed with Noah's statement. Whether it's the entrance ceremony, the physical strengthening long-distance running training, or the daily classes, there have always been a lot of actual combat training. Therefore, now that we're starting to teach how to use a blaze, it definitely can't be separated from actual combat. Ever since they entered the school, until now, until the announcement of the new blade battle, Noah and the others had never experienced using a blaze before. Now, the class on how to use blaze was finally about to begin. With how ridiculous the school had always been, it wasn't hard to imagine that they would let everyone participate in a mock battle with blaze right from the start. Even so, I still hope that the school can give us some time to get used to blaze. Sui Gaoya said with a nervous expression. The school forbids students from using a blaze, and since entering the school, we haven't had any classes related to blaze. I haven't even used my own blaze before, so I don't know how to use it. During the entrance ceremony, only those who had defeated their opponents could enter the school. That was the only time the people present had used their blaze fang. Sui Gaoya didn't fight at that time. The reason was very simple. It was because Sui Gaoya's opponent was scared and ran away. Sui Gaoya, on the other hand, was so scared that her legs went soft. In the end, she didn't manage to escape in time and ended up staying behind. That was why Sui Gaoya and Evanly were the same. Both of them had passed because they had lost their opponents, so they hadn't really used their blaze yet. As for me, I've learned Sword Dao before. However, Evanly's tone was rather relaxed. Although I haven't used blaze before, my blaze is also a sword, so there shouldn't be any problems using it. My blaze is also a type of weapon that I've often used in the past. Orange Bar smiled steadily. So, I don't have any problems using it. Julie opened her mouth slightly and only said this one sentence. There are no barriers to use it. Evanly, Julie, Tachibana, and Sui Gaoya all turned to look at Noah. Why are you looking at me? Noah rolled his eyes. Don't tell me you guys think that I don't even know how to pull the trigger. The group of girls looked at each other. Other than Julie, they all laughed bitterly. That's right. For Noah, whose blaze was a revolver, even if he wasn't very familiar with his blaze, he should still know how to pull the trigger. Facing a real gun, even if he only knew how to use it at this level, it would still bring an unimaginable threat and pressure to the group of students. That's great. Sui Gaoya couldn't help but murmur. If only I had the experience of using blaze, that would be great. This time is different from the entrance ceremony. Even if you fail, you won't be kicked out of the school. Orange Bar comforted her. So, yeah, you don't have to be too stubborn. After all, you can start using the blaze after school. You can get used to it when the time comes. From today until the start of the new blade battle, as long as the first grade students applied, they could use blaze in the school after school to practice. Therefore, even if they didn't have the experience of using a blaze until the start of the new blade battle, and even during the process, there would be plenty of opportunities to use blaze. But Suegaya's expression was still uneasy. I'm not good at fighting, it's okay. Orange Bar tried to calm Suegaya's uneasiness. This time is different from the entrance ceremony. It's not a one-on-one duel, but a battle between tripping blades. I'm still here. Suegaya smiled and nodded, but that smile, no matter how you looked at it, was very forced. Noah and the others, who already had a certain degree of understanding of Suegaya, easily guessed her thoughts. Needless to say, Suegaya was definitely worried that she would be a burden to Orange Bar. Gaoya, don't worry. Ivanli purposely made his tone sound cheerful and patted Suegaya's back. There are only a few people in our class who have experience in martial arts or sports. The rest are like you, ordinary students. Orange Bar is the successor of Orange Bar, so it's impossible for him to lose to those people. When fighting, don't forget to use breathing technique. Noah also looked at Suegaya. That way, at least you'll have enough strength. If you can't win, just run. There's nothing to be ashamed of. N. Suegaya nodded her head vigorously. Her expression seemed to have eased a lot compared to before. At this time, 2 male students also came over. Are you having a battle meeting? With this sentence, the 2 male students, who Noah was familiar with, also joined in. Almost at the same time, Suegaya, who wasn't good at dealing with boys, shrank behind Orange Bar. What's wrong? Noah smiled calmly. Kyuchong, Okazaki, are you here to scout the enemy? The 2 newcomers were Kyuchong and Okazaki. Is there a need to scout the enemy? Okazaki pushed the glasses on her nose and said in a very arrogant tone. We've already seen your skills. Also, the list that the Academy gave us as a reference for choosing tripping double blade also recorded the general information of everyone in our class. Kyuchong rubbed his head. Although I haven't seen it, Okazaki memorized it all. That counts as enemy information, right? I've also seen that list. Ivanli looked at Kyuchong and Okazaki with interest. Very few people in our class have experience in martial arts, but I think all of you have practiced martial arts before, right? That's a really strong enemy. Orange Bar showed a reluctant smile. Yeah, we have to do our best. N. Suegaya nodded again. Kyuchong fixed his gaze on Noah, his eyes full of fighting spirit. I hope we can go up against each other again this time. Humph. Okazaki smiled provocatively. This time, we won't lose. Kyuchong and Okazaki looked at each other and smiled, then turned and left. A declaration before the battle. Ivanli blinked at Noah. They're not afraid of going up against you. Is that so? Noah shrugged and said. Are you afraid of going up against me? How is that possible? Ivanli and Orange Bar answered almost at the same time. Last time, you purposely let me in, I still remember that. Ivanli said with dissatisfaction. I want to prove that at that time, even if you didn't let me in, I could still get in. I've been wanting to fight you for a long time. Orange Bar was a little excited. I won't lose that easily. Yeah, Julie nodded. Even if your opponent is Noah, you can't admit defeat. Suegaya secretly glanced at Noah, then shyly hid behind Orange Bar. Obviously, it was a bit difficult for this timid girl to make a declaration. Looking at this group of cute girls, Noah smiled knowingly. Let's do our best. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.